Chapter 62. With a loud bang, Feng Nu staggered back 3 steps, the silver battle chi reverting to a dark red color. A trickle of blood trickled down from the corner of her mouth. She had suffered a serious injury. And the elder of the fire dragon race, Jin Tu, was also not in a good condition. There were several crisscrossing wounds in front of his body, blood constantly flowing out. Although he had a fire constitution, but the feeling of the 9 levels of battle chi invading his body through the blazing heaven sword was not pleasant at all. Ah! Jin Tu roared, his seemingly old body suddenly swelled up, and his imposing manner suddenly soared. He fiercely threw a punch at Feng Nu, silver battle chi condensed into a ball, and like a cannonball, hurtled toward Feng Nu. Feng Nu's expression changed slightly. At this time, her battle chi could no longer reach the level of Saint Battle Chi. Holding the sword with both hands, she could only rely on the advantage of the blazing heaven sword to split open this heavy battle chi bullet. However, she did not have the slightest confidence. No one is allowed to hurt Feng Nu roar. A tall figure suddenly leaped out from the side, a huge heavy sword striking the silver battle chi bullet with a loud bang. The strong explosion of battle chi caused several surrounding dragon warriors to tumble to one side. The one who suddenly appeared and blocked the attack for Feng Nu was Zi Qingjian. There were obvious changes on Zi Qingjian's body. His disheveled hair had turned blood red, his already tall body had swelled up, his breathing was heavy like an iron-back earth dragon, and the bulging blood vessels on his body were clearly visible. Even after receiving the attack of Saint Battle Chi, his feet only sank into the ground, but he did not retreat in the slightest. Jin Tu, who had raised his battle chi to the strongest level, exclaimed in surprise, "Berserker, there are berserkers?" No one answered his question. Zi Qingjian walked out from the crowd of mercenaries at the entrance of the cave alone. His eyes had turned blood red, and in his blurred consciousness, he only remembered a few familiar names. The huge heavy sword emitted a bright green light, and the 3 feet long sword light was not the slightest bit weaker than Jin Tuesday. 4 fire dragon warriors charged at Zi Qingjian from different directions. The heavy sword was like withered grass in Zi Qingjian's hands. There was nothing fancy about it. It circled around Zi Qingjian's body, and immediately, a green light blocked out like a wall. The 4 figures retreated even faster than when they came, but this time they were sent flying. Blood gushed out of their mouths, and the 4 dragon-human warriors were severely injured. Although their dragon-human physique prevented them from dying, they had already lost the ability to fight. The purple purity sword 6 was there. His red hair, red eyes, and his entire body emitted an unstable green light. He was like a demon god. Both sides stopped fighting. For a moment, he became the center of attention. Li Hua stopped his magic and gasped for breath. His pale face showed that he was in a very weak state. He sat down on the ground and did not dare to meditate. He could only take out the few magic scrolls that he had at the bottom of his chest. Nian Bing came to Feng Nu's side. She immediately changed from ice to water and released a healing technique on Feng Nu. He helped her recover her damaged meridians. "What's wrong with Brother Qingjian? He seems to be a little delirious. I'll call him back." "No." Feng Nu stopped Nian Bing. "No one can stop him now. He has gone berserk." "Berserk?" It was Nian Bing's first time hearing this term. "What does berserk mean?" Feng Nu whispered, "This is a special type of physique. It is very adaptable. Especially after the ancient war, it was thought to be extinct. Berserk warriors are called berserkers. They used to be the strongest soldiers of mankind, but at the same time, they were also the most difficult to control. Although berserk warriors are the strongest in individual combat, they also have a huge flaw. That is, their minds will also fall into a berserk state along with their bodies. Under such circumstances, they can no longer distinguish between friend and foe. Their magic power is raised to the limit, and their skin is as hard as iron. If they have cultivated Do Qi, their Do Qi will increase exponentially. After Berserk, Berserkers only know how to attack until they use up all their strength. Every time they go Berserk, they have to sleep for 3 days. I really did not expect that your friend would be a Berserker. It seems that we still have a chance. With his strength as a pugilist and Berserk, even a swordsman would not be able to defeat him easily. I originally did not want to kill, but now it seems that I have no choice. Feng Nu, I know you have some misgivings. If you really do not want to kill, then you can beat up those fire dragon people until they lose their ability to fight. As long as we can leave here safely, it will be enough. Feng Nu nodded. As soon as Zi Qing's sword launches an attack with all your strength. As long as he or I can entangle the other party's elder, we still have a chance. Kill! Zi Qing's sword roared angrily. In his eyes, the most important enemy was naturally Jean Tuesday. Subconsciously, the most important people to him were undoubtedly his sister and Feng Nu. Just now it was Jean Tu who injured Feng Nu. At this moment, he suddenly burst out, naturally Jean Tu would be his first target. Zi Qing's sword lifted his heavy sword high. Although he was in a berserk state, he did not forget his abilities at all. Instead, he became more proficient in using them. The skills that Purple Dream used to fight against Feng Nu appeared on his body, transforming into several shadows that dashed towards the swordsman-level Jean Tu. Feng Nu was about to move, when suddenly she saw a black light descending from the sky. Without any reflection of light, it headed straight for Long Ling, who was treating the mercenaries. She did not care where the light came from. In a flash, she came to Long Ling's side and flicked the parting heaven sword upwards, sending the black light flying to one side. With a light clink, it turned out to be a black needle. A faint fishy smell spread in the air, indicating that the needle was highly poisonous. Ah! Why did you save me? Long Ling finally came to her senses, staring at Feng Nu in a daze. Feng Nu's sharp eyes looked in the direction of the black needle. It was a dense mountain forest where she could not find any energy fluctuations. This was definitely not an attack launched by the fire dragon people. As a proud dragon, they would never use poison. While searching for the enemy in the dark, she subconsciously replied, Nian Bing asked me to protect you. You don't have to thank me, thank him directly. Be careful, there may be other enemies around. Thank you, I will be careful. Long Ling's voice was very calm, not at all affected by the threat to her life. She continued to treat the mercenaries. Carlo had also heard the conversation between Feng Nu and Nian Bing earlier. Once the purple purity sword made its move, he immediately led the mercenaries to launch a counterattack against the dragon people. He knew that as long as Feng Nu could perform as usual, they would still have a chance to escape even though the other party had the advantage in numbers. The purple purity sword, after going berserk, was just as Feng Nu had said. Even a powerful cultivator like Jean Tu could not do anything to him at this moment. At this moment, he could not avoid the purple purity sword, otherwise the ones who would suffer would be his tribesmen. Although the dragon people had strong innate defense, a direct hit from such violent fighting energy was enough to kill them. The scene was completely chaotic. Feng Nu finally showed her power. The purple purity sword, under the guidance of her graceful figure, transformed into countless sword lights. Each sword light was like a poisonous snake spitting out its tongue. As the sword lights flashed, one after another, the fire dragon people fell to the ground after being stabbed. In a short while, more than a dozen fire dragon people had lost their fighting ability. With the sudden reduction in pressure, the mercenaries all used their lives and unleashed their fighting energy to the limit. Under the leadership of Carlo, Gatling, and Huarei, they charged towards the fire dragon people. Suddenly, countless red lights scattered from the sky. There was only one target, and that was Feng Nu. The red lights cooperated very well and blocked all of Feng Nu's paths of advance. She had no choice but to stop and use the parting heaven sword to block the attack of the fighting energy arrows. The fire dragon people also took this opportunity to regroup and charge forward, completely suppressing the mercenaries back to the entrance of the cave. At this moment, Feng Nu, like the purple purity sword, had been isolated outside. Nian Bing released a few spells to stabilize the situation and pulled Zi Qingming back to Long Ling's side. At this moment, there was a sudden change outside. Jin Tu's fighting energy surged and he punched the purple purity sword back. He shouted, "Fire Dragon Soaring Cloud Formation." All the fire dragon warriors who were attacking suddenly retreated. Several hundred of them actually formed a strange formation. 18 of them were the elites of the fire dragon warriors and surrounded the Phoenix Lady. Under the lead of a long-legged fire dragon warrior, they launched an attack on the Phoenix Lady. Another 18 people formed a formation and surrounded the clear sword. They only fought with the clear sword, but did not engage him directly. It was obvious that they wanted to exhaust his stamina. The fire dragons were quickly busy. The warriors who had lost their fighting ability were carried to the side by their clansmen. Jin Tu's whole body shone brightly and he walked step by step to the entrance of the cave under the protection of his clansmen. Bow! A clansman handed a bow to him. The other fire dragons formed teams of 18 and slowly pressed towards the entrance of the cave. Although there was no enemy attack and the pressure on them was greatly reduced, the hearts of the mercenaries were extremely heavy. They never thought that the opportunity they had was nipped in the bud. At this time, Phoenix Maiden no longer had the ability to use Saint Battle Chi. Although her speed and attack power were strong, the formation formed by the 18 fire dragon warriors was very strange. No matter which direction she attacked, she would have to take the lead to face 9 opponents at the same time. For a time, she rushed left and right, but she could not rush out of the darkness. Jin Tu did not let his clansmen attack the mercenaries. He held his longbow and stared at Nian Bing with a sharp gaze. He had already discovered that this young man who was constantly using magic was the reason why the mercenaries were able to hold on. As long as a few magicians were destroyed, the situation would immediately become clear. Jin Tu's eyes shone brightly. He held the longbow in his hand, and the bowstring opened in an instant. Silver holy fighting energy enveloped the whole bow. A strange scene appeared. The silver fighting energy continued to form in his right hand as he pulled the bow, and it turned into a sharp arrow with pure fighting energy. Dragon guiding arrow. The silver light suddenly bloomed. Nian Bing only felt her chest contracting. Before the arrow arrived, her body already had a strong feeling. Without any hesitation, Nian Bing made a prompt decision to activate the most powerful 2-color ice ball to meet the arrow. The mercenaries were not idle either. Carlo, Gatling, and Hua Xian jumped up one after another, trying to block the arrow. However, the arrow formed by holy fighting energy turned into a beautiful arc at the window and directly passed through their defense. Its target was still Nian Bing. Could the 2-color ice ball block the arrow of holy fighting energy? The answer was no. Amidst a loud explosion, the dual-colored ice ball was blasted into ice powder by Nian Bing's violent fighting energy. The silver light pierced through the ice and arrived within 10 meters of Nian Bing. Be careful. Zi Qingming slid forward, releasing her green fighting energy. She was ready to block the arrow for Nian Bing. The biggest advantage of the green curtain sword technique was its speed. A fan-shaped green curtain of ice completely blocked Nian Bing's body. However, it was still not enough. With a light clink, the green curtain sword disappeared. Zi Qingming clenched her dagger tightly, and her body was thrown back. She only managed to cut the side of the arrow before she was sent flying. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth, and a look of despair appeared in her beautiful eyes. No! The ice spirit immediately stood in front of Nian Bing. Her eyes were filled with panic, but it wasn't because of the Do Chi arrows that were about to hit her, but because of Nian Bing's safety. Her whole body shook. Long Ling suddenly found that she had changed direction. Then, she felt a piercing pain. Her body was thrown forward, and she staggered a few steps before she could stabilize herself. Nian Bing was facing Long Ling. There was a bloody hole in his right shoulder. His body was completely penetrated by the arrow. Fortunately, after blocking it several times, the explosive power of the dragon guiding arrow had been robbed. In addition, the green curtain sword had changed the direction of the arrow. This allowed Nian Bing to avoid fatal danger. Even so, the remaining power of the dragon guiding arrow still pierced through his body. Blood gushed out. Nian Bing did not hesitate to use a healing technique on herself. Only then did the blood flow stop a little. "No, this is impossible." Long Ling's voice was trembling. The pain in her back had subsided a little. Only now did she realize what had happened. She stood in front of Nian Bing, but Nian Bing suddenly hugged her from behind and spun around. The dragon-guided arrow pierced through Nian Bing's shoulder and only disappeared when it hit her. But at this time, she was not injured except for a little pain. Nian Bing smiled bitterly. "This is the inevitable result. Ling come, you are better at healing than me. Help me stop the bleeding. This time, I'm afraid we can't escape." Long Ling hurriedly ran back to Nian Bing's side. She first used a healing technique on Nian Bing's shoulder. Then, she tore the rough cloth around the wound. "Vest, where's the vest? Why didn't you wear the vest I gave you yesterday?" Long Ling's voice became very agitated. "Could it be that even the things I gave you are so annoying? No, silly Ling do you know? After you gave me that vest yesterday, my heart was about to break. That was obviously given to you by Master. I can even smell your body fragrance. How can I use your protective treasure to protect myself? Silly girl, you're wearing it now. Otherwise, I'm afraid we would have become a pair of gourds just now." It turned out that last night, Nian Bing played the bagpipe to find Feng Nu and asked her to put the vest back on Long Ling's body without her noticing. With Feng Nu's ability, it was completely possible to do this without anyone noticing. In fact, just now, Nian Bing could have let Long Ling block the dragon guiding arrow for him. With the strength of the golden red vest, Long Ling would only be a little injured. But, as a man, how could he let a woman block this arrow for him? At that time, Nian Bing did not hesitate at all. He quickly hugged Long Ling and turned around. The ice wall spell scroll was his last line of defense, but he was still heavily injured. Long Ling looked at the gentle light in Nian Bing's eyes, then looked at his pale face. Her heart trembled, and her originally empty eyes gained some spirit. She helped Nian Bing to sit down, then she straightened her delicate body and walked out. At this time, Jin Tu had already led his subordinates to slowly press forward. After injuring the opponent's most important magician, they no longer had any scruples. In fact, from the beginning until now, it had only been half an incense's time, but so many changes had happened. From the beginning when Feng Nu attacked, to protecting everyone into the cave, to resisting with all her might, to the purple purity sword going berserk, Feng Nu attacking and Nian Bing being heavily injured. Almost every moment, changes were happening on the battlefield. Without Feng Nu's resistance, who could stop Jin Tu? The mercenaries gathered together. Everyone knew that the fighting spirit in their hearts was gradually crumbling under the immense pressure brought by the opponent. This time, they could no longer resist the opponent's attack. At this time, Long Ling came behind the mercenaries and chanted in a low voice. "With my life as the price. Curse everything!" Just as she chanted to this point, a large hand suddenly covered her mouth from behind, forcibly interrupting her incantation. If a magic incantation was chanted halfway, it could not be interrupted. Otherwise, it would cause great harm to the magician. But if the incantation was interrupted at the beginning, the magic would not be able to be completed. "Ling if this magic incantation is to be used, it should be used by me, not you." Nian Bing hugged Long Ling tightly in his arms. His voice was so firm. Nian Bing's warm embrace made Long Ling feel at ease. Even if she knew that she was about to face a devastating disaster, she did not have the slightest fear. Hugging Long Ling's wet and soft body, Nian Bing secretly smiled bitterly. What should come will come. Just as he was about to chant the same incantation as Long Ling, a voice suddenly dispelled his thoughts. Quick, everyone quickly retreat inside. The cave inside is narrow, so it's easier to defend. This was Feng Yun's voice. Nian Bing turned around and saw Feng Yun running out of the cave. At the same time, no one thought that Feng Nu would explode. If Feng Nu was a huge bomb, then Jin Tu's serious injury to Nian Bing was the fuse that detonated this bomb. A mournful phoenix cry pierced into everyone's ears like sharp needles. The red aura around Feng Nu's body suddenly converged. Her pink long hair turned dark red at this moment. Her originally white skin flickered with a faint red luster. The clothes on her back were suddenly torn apart, and a pair of red wings instantly spread out. The inner edges of the wings were curved, and the phoenix feathers were arranged closely together. The spread-out wings were more than 2 meters long. Feng Nu's originally slender and delicate body looked as petite as before in the contrast of this pair of wings. Under the spread of the wings, Feng Nu's body completely floated up. Her pair of beautiful blue eyes turned golden at this moment. Seeing this, Jin Tu could not help but turn pale with fright. Be careful, it's the royal feathers of the Feng people. His warning was already too late. It was also a red-colored fighting aura. As the wings fluttered downwards, it turned into a circle of light. An irresistible huge force spread through the bodies of every fire dragon warrior who was attacking the Phoenix girl. 18 streams of blood spurted out at the same time. 18 figures were sent flying 30 meters away. Feng Nu, who was in midair, let out a long whistle. The parting heaven sword in her hand slashed horizontally, and a bright red light floated down, drawing a ravine in front of the huge cave. The surging Do Qi forced all the fire dragon warriors who were charging forward to retreat. Seeing such a situation, Nian Bing was not happy but worried. Displaying such a huge power in a crisis, it was very likely that it did not belong to her. The more it was like this, the more serious the backlash would be. He hurriedly shouted, Feng Nu, quickly bring Brother Qing Jian back. The cave is small and narrow, it's suitable for us to defend. A faint afterimage flashed in midair. In a flash, Feng Nu was already above the purple table sword. She reached out and grabbed his clothes, lifting him up into the air. At this moment, the purple table sword's mind was completely in a frenzy. It could not differentiate between friend and foe. The heavy sword in its hand suddenly swung upwards, slashing towards Feng Nu. Idiot, it's me. Feng Nu held the parting heaven sword horizontally, easily blocking the purple table sword's attack. Strangely, the purple table sword, who was in a frenzy, immediately became obedient when it heard Feng Nu's voice. Buzz, the Silver Saint Do Qi dragon appeared again. This time, its target was Feng Nu in midair. Jin knew very well that offending the royal family of the Feng people meant that there would be an irreparable gap between them and the Feng people. Only by killing Feng Nu and everyone else here would they be able to cover up everything. The huge red wings suddenly retracted, and the left wing flapped horizontally like lightning. The dragon arrow that Nian Bing could not block with all his might was shattered by Feng Nu's huge wings. In the next moment, Feng Nu was already at the entrance of the cave. She held the parting heaven sword horizontally in her hand, forcing all the attacking enemies back. Nian Bing subconsciously pulled Feng Nu. Quickly, retreat inside. At this moment, the mercenaries saw that Feng Nu had blocked the enemies and quickly retreated into the depths of the cave. He suddenly exclaimed and let go of Feng Nu's hand. Now, Feng Nu's body was as hot as charcoal. Feng Nu's eyes were cold. She stared at Jin, who was holding a longbow, and said coldly, I haven't killed anyone today, but that doesn't mean I won't in the future. If you have the ability, then come in. After that, she covered Nian Bing and the others and retreated into the cave. Unexpectedly, perhaps it was because of the Phoenix girl's sudden display of power, the fire dragon person actually did not attack. They let Feng Nu, Nian Bing, and the mercenaries retreat into the cave. After the mercenaries retreated a few hundred meters into the cave, they entered a narrow passageway about 3 meters wide. They could not hold on any longer, and all of them sat down on the ground as if paralyzed. At this moment, even the 3 Frozen Moon mercenary group leader and vice leader had less than a third of their strength left. Although no one died, 2/3 of them were seriously injured. Fortunately, Long Ling gave them timely treatment, so they were able to survive and escape here. Feng Nu raised her hand and slapped down, knocking out Zi Qingjian and throwing him aside. She turned around and looked outside. Only then did she feel relieved. "Why did you hit my brother?" Zi Qingming angrily said. Feng Nu's golden eyes emitted a cold aura, making Zi Qingming's whole body tremble. "He is in a state of madness, only by knocking him out can he recover. However, although his strength is not exhausted, I'm afraid he will need to sleep for 2 days to recover." Nian Bing looked at Feng Nu with concern and asked, "How are you?" Feng Nu shook her head and said, "I'm fine. How about you?" Her golden eyes fell on the terrible wound on Nian Bing's shoulder. Nian Bing's face was very ugly at this time. The large amount of blood loss made her originally rosy face become abnormally pale. She smiled bitterly and said, "I won't die. However, my right shoulder blade seems to be broken. I used magic to stop the bleeding, but I'm afraid there is no chance to heal it." Feng Nu, why don't they rush in? Is it because they are afraid of you? Feng Nu shook her head and said, "No, it shouldn't be. I also just found out. These fire dragon people seem to be afraid of this cave. From the beginning, when I attacked the cave entrance, they deliberately avoided entering the cave. Now that I think about it, if we had chosen to retreat into the cave earlier, perhaps the situation would have been much better. However, at least for now we will be fine." "I'm sorry, it's all my fault." Carlo's heavy voice sounded. "It's my will that brought everyone into this place of death. If I had listened to Nian Bing's advice and given up on this mission, you wouldn't have been trapped here." Feng Nu's gaze fell on Carlo's body and she said indifferently, "You don't need to blame yourself. It's only you who are trapped here. With my ability, I can take Nian Bing away at any time. However, I can only take one person with me at most." When these words came out, the entire cave became silent. No one doubted Feng Nu's words. She had used her own strength to prove everything. "Feng Nu, take Ling Er away." Nian Bing's voice was very calm, but it was unusually firm. Feng Nu, Zi Qingming, and Long Ling's gaze fell on him at the same time. Feng Nu said strangely, "Don't you want to leave here alive?" Nian Bing looked at his right arm that was hanging limply by his side and said indifferently, "No one is willing to die. However, as a magician and as a chef, I have already lost my right arm. Even if I go out and heal my injury, I can't use my right hand to cook or use my right hand to draw scrolls. In this life, I have 2 goals. One is to reach the peak of cooking and fulfill my master's wish. The other is to cultivate magic to the highest level and avenge my parents. I've lost my right arm, and all of this is uncertain to me. Rather than that, why don't I give the hope of survival to someone else? Actually..." He suddenly lowered his voice and whispered a few words into the wind maiden's ear. Feng Nu's body shook. "What? Your enemy is actually her?" Nian Bing nodded and said with a bitter smile, "Rest for a while and recover your strength. Then take Ling Er away. If in the future you have the confidence to surpass that person, then take revenge for me. Then we won't be friends in vain. Of course, this is only a request of mine. Please only go when you have the ability to do so." "No, I won't leave here," Long Ling calmly said while treating the injured. "Ling Er, don't be willful." These words came out from both Nian Bing and Li Luo's mouths at the same time. Both of their expressions became anxious. Long Ling raised her head and smiled. Her usual expression reappeared on her beautiful face. "I'm not being willful. Since we came together, then we should leave together. Otherwise, I won't leave. The injured here need me." Nian Bing, thank you. At least now I understand that I didn't love the wrong person. Nian Bing frowned and resisted the pain in her shoulder. Ling don't forget, Teacher Long Ji only has you as his daughter. If something happens to you, what will happen to Teacher? What will happen to the Union? Long Ling said indifferently, if Father was here, he wouldn't abandon his comrades and escape alone. Feng Nu said coldly, are you talking about me? Long Ling shook her head and said, of course not. I don't have the qualifications to talk about you. No one here has the qualifications. If it wasn't for you, we would have been killed by those fire dragons. It was you who saved everyone's lives. I can see that you're not an ordinary human. I think you have your own mission in entering the human world. Therefore, if you want to leave, none of us will have any objections. If possible, take Nian Bing away. Although her injuries are very serious, as long as we can find a light elemental sorcerer who can use healing magic of the 9th step and above, it's still possible for her to recover. Nian Bing smiled. Ling let's not argue. Since none of us is willing to leave, then let's all stay. In any case, the enemy won't rush in, so let's just starve to death here. I think that the materials we brought should be enough to eat for a month. If we save some, we might be able to last longer. The red radiance converged and Feng Nu returned to her original form. Nian Bing found that her body was slightly trembling. Supporting her, she asked with concern, Feng Nu, are you okay? Feng Nu shook her head and said, cave. Nian Bing, I want to talk with you alone, is that okay? Nian Bing stared blankly for a moment, then said, of course. Immediately, he supported Feng Nu to a corner and let her sit down. At the same time, he used what little magical power he had left to cast a healing spell on the wound on his shoulder. Chapter 63. You've seen it for yourself. I'm not a real human. Feng Nu laughed self-deprecatingly as her body trembled even more violently. Her previously scorching body had now become somewhat cold. Nian Bing pulled Feng Nu into his embrace. Feng Nu did not struggle as she leaned against Nian Bing's left shoulder, feeling the heat from his body. Nian Bing, how did you know about the existence of the Dragon Human clan? Nian Bing wasn't worried about his own safety at all. He had already let go of all his burdens when his right shoulder was pierced by the dragon's arrow. Just as he had said, even if he managed to leave this place alive, he would be a cripple. He didn't even know if he could take care of himself, let alone avenge his parents. With his arms around Feng Nu, they were like a couple at this time. The feeling of joy amidst bitterness was a different kind of feeling. Nian Bing smiled and tore a piece of cloth from his coarse clothes to wrap around his wound. Then, he said, I found out about this from Kitty's father. Then, he recounted how he had met Kitty after he had broken up with Feng Nu in Ice Snow City, as well as how Kitty's father, the dragon summoner Hillard, had met him. I see. No wonder you know about the existence of the Dragon Human clan. Nian Bing, at this point, there's no need for me to hide anything from you. You should have heard what the Golden Monkey clan leader said. That's right, I'm from the Feng people. The phoenix and the giant phoenix were once creatures of this mainland. However, unlike the dragons, there was only one phoenix. To be precise, there would only ever be one fire phoenix. However, the difference between the phoenix and the dragons was that the phoenix would never die. Time could not limit its existence. However, Lord Phoenix had suffered an irreparable injury in order to protect the humans during the ancient war. Its soul had been directly attacked by the enemy, and even its ability to be reborn could not allow it to continue living. Therefore, Lord Phoenix had no choice but to leave its bloodline to the humans. In other words, the Feng people are actually humans with the bloodline of the Phoenix. The situation of the Dragonmen is different from ours. They only received a very small portion of the dragon's bloodline. Just like the Iron North dragons, we are also a type of mutant. The Dragonborn race relies on the bloodline of the dragons, and most of them have outstanding short-term and defensive abilities. However, other than the layer of dragon-like scales on the surface of their bodies, they did not have the power of other dragons. Dragons were the most powerful creatures on the continent, and it had always existed. How could he really pass on his abilities to humans? However, we, the Phoenix people, are different. What we have is the true power of the Phoenix. Most of our people, like the dragon people, have inherited part of the Phoenix's abilities. However, there is an extremely small number of people who have truly inherited the Phoenix bloodline. After continuous evolution, they can even become true Phoenixes. These people are the royal family of the Phoenixes. Nian Bing took a deep breath. Compared to Hillard's superficial explanation, Feng Nu's explanation was much more concise and clear. So, you're a member of the royal family of the Phoenixes? The wings that appeared on your back just now were the evolution you were talking about? Feng Nu nodded and sighed softly. She said, I didn't expect that the first time I used the power of the Phoenix would be to go against the Dragonmen. In fact, the relationship between the Feng people and the dragons is very good. The ancestral Phoenix was once the disciple of the dragon god. Although the power of the Phoenix can never be compared to that of a real dragon god, the Phoenix has its own special abilities. Although I am a member of the royal family and have the innate 9 abandonments constitution, however, the years of cultivation are still too short. Rashly using the power of the Phoenix will cause great harm to my body. I thought I could take you out of here, but when I retracted my Phoenix wings, I realized that I have no ability to leave this place at all. How difficult is it to evolve into a Phoenix? Ever since the ancestral Phoenix passed down its bloodline, no member of the royal family has been able to accomplish this feat and make the Phoenix reappear on the continent. Nian Bing thought for a while and said, Feng Nu, the divine stone of fire on the Xingyang saber is the purest fire gemstone. Perhaps it can help you recover your strength as soon as possible. Do you need any special conditions to transform into a Phoenix? What level of transformation did you calculate just now? As he said that, he took out the Xingyang saber and handed it to Feng Nu. Feng Nu looked at the flashing red divine stone of fire and smiled. She said, Thank you, Nian Bing. The power of the Phoenix is too mysterious. Back then, the ancestral Phoenix only passed down its bloodline before it died for real. Not to mention me, even the elders in the clan don't know what the conditions are for the Phoenix to evolve without any care. They only told me that to evolve into a real Phoenix, I need to go through 9 evolutions. The first evolution will give me one more ability of the Phoenix. When I complete the last evolution, I will be able to leave the human body and become a real fire Phoenix. Right now, I have only completed the first evolution. The wings of the Phoenix that you saw just now are the second evolution. Even the greatest genius of my ancestors had only completed 5 evolutions. I had never thought of achieving the highest 9 evolutions. I only wanted to increase my strength to protect my people. After all, the dragon-human clan has at least 7 branches, but we, the Feng people, only have 1. As long as an ordinary human drinks our Phoenix clan's note, they will also be able to obtain the abilities of the Phoenix clan. At the same time, the Phoenix clan has kept many precious secrets. Those despicable humans have long coveted them. I am a royal warrior of the Phoenix clan. Therefore, I need to become stronger to protect my people. Nian Bing nodded and said, I see. Feng Nu, the reason why you can have strength close to swordsman is because of the first evolution of the Phoenix body? If you can truly complete the second evolution, will you be able to truly possess your previous strength? Feng Nu smiled bitterly and said, Stop dreaming. The evolution of the Phoenix body will only increase my ability, but not my strength. If you want to become stronger, you need to be ahead of yourself and continue to cultivate. Even if you really complete the second evolution, you will need a long time of cultivation and actual combat to fully control the Phoenix wings. There is no such thing as a free lunch in this world, not even for us Phoenix clan. The reason why I was able to erupt with such a strong power just now was because I burned my phoenix blood. Under the effect of the phoenix fire from the phoenix bloodline, I can use the power that does not belong to me. Therefore, although I look fine on the surface, I have lost no less blood than you. Although the stone of fire god can help me recover better, it can't help me regenerate my blood. The phoenixes burn their blood as a way to save themselves in the most desperate situation. It's very damaging to their vitality. I won't be able to fully recover in less than 3 months. Nian Bing smiled and said, "It seems we can only be lovebirds here." Feng Nu, did you call me over just to tell me your background before we die? Feng Nu rolled her eyes at Nian Bing and said, "Of course not. I called you over to discuss with you how to better survive. Although we have fallen into a dead end, it is not impossible to escape." Nian Bing's heart moved and she looked around. Although they had already entered a few hundred meters into the cave, the surrounding walls of the cave were extremely special. It was able to emit faint red light, and the fire element in the cave was extremely active. It was also because of this very weak red light that they could barely distinguish the things around them. Feng Nu, do you mean to rely on our strength to dig a way out of this cave? Feng Nu said unhappily, "Stop dreaming. Don't you realize that the rocks here are especially hard? Moreover, we are now in the belly of the mountain. Even if we have treasured swords like Blazing Heaven and True Sun, it is impossible to dig a way out. I think that the reason why this place has such a warm environment is inseparable from the structure of this mountain. Just the food alone will make us unable to persevere. You are so smart, can't you think of other places?" Nian Bing's eyes flashed, and her mind was enlightened. "Since we can't go out, let's go in. Maybe there is a way out. Since we are already in here, we have to go take a look at our treasure." Phoenix Maiden smiled and said, "That's what I thought as well. If I guessed correctly, there should be a fire-type wyvern living in this cave, which is what Jean and I calls the Dragon Lord. Wyverns are much more advanced than earth dragons, but they are not real dragons. Since there is a wyvern here, we have to find a way out. Wyverns can also be called flying dragons. They can fly, but most of them are very lazy. Every time they sleep, they will last for several months. They are close relatives of dragons. Therefore, most of the dragonborn race will look for a wyvern and regard it as the dragon lord of their race. Wyverns are very powerful and intelligent. Although they are not real dragons, they already have some of the abilities of dragons. In terms of strength, they are at least not inferior to that golden-backed dragon king you just mentioned, and might even be stronger. But wyverns have huge bodies, and can't pass through such a narrow cave. Although we are already in the depths of the cave, don't you realize that the air is very fresh? If my guess is correct, that wyvern should be sleeping in the deepest part of the cave. And from there should be an even wider path to leave this cave. That is the place we are looking for." Nian Bing's eyes lit up. If they could avoid death, who would be willing to stay in this damned place? In addition, the dragon spirit had once said that light magic of the 9th step was capable of healing his current injuries. As long as he was alive, there would be hope. Although he was very excited because of the appearance of hope, he didn't lose his calm. Nodding, he said, "Good. Let's take a rest first. When we have recovered some strength, we will explore the depths of this cave. As long as we find the path, I will be able to fly out with magic and bring you out of this cave." Feng Nu nodded and said, "When I discovered that those fire dragons didn't chase after us, I had this idea. But now there are a few issues that we have to pay attention to. And the most important one is that we must not wake up that wyvern. Otherwise, even if I am at my peak, I will definitely not be a match for that wyvern. We will die very miserably." Nian Bing nodded and said, "You are familiar with dragons. If you have any questions, just tell me directly. I will definitely cooperate. I believe that President Carlo and the others will also cooperate with you." Feng Nu said, "Do you still remember Carlo's promise to you before coming here? He wasn't wrong. The treasure really exists. Wyvern's intelligence is close to that of dragons. Therefore, they have the same hobby as dragons, and that is to collect all kinds of treasures. Since this is the wyvern's lair, then the treasure is very likely to be much bigger than what we imagined. Although wyverns sleep very deeply, once someone dares to touch their treasure, even if it is only a gold coin, they will immediately wake up. Nian Bing was dumbstruck and said, "It can't be, right? Dragons are actually so greedy?" Feng Nu revealed a smile and said, "The dragon's moniker of wealth has been around for a long time. This is not strange. Therefore, if we want to leave this place alive, we must not have any thoughts of touching those treasures. Otherwise, everyone will die. Wyverns will not show mercy to those who dare to invade their property. You and I don't know much about those mercenaries. When facing a common enemy, they can unite against a common enemy. But once they are faced with the temptation of treasures, whether they can withstand the test will affect us. Do you understand what I mean?" Nian Bing nodded and said, "You are afraid that someone will take advantage of the situation to steal the treasures. Your worries are completely reasonable. Not to mention them, if I saw a magic book that I really need, I am afraid that I will not be able to hold myself back." Feng Nu laughed and said, "You are already like this, are you still greedy?" Nian Bing hugged Feng Nu tightly, closed his eyes and said, "I really want to be like this forever. Feng Nu, I think my time of freedom will not be long. If I can get out of here alive, maybe I will make a choice in the aspect of love." Feng Nu was silent for a moment and after a long while she said, "I know. Actually, your expression last night already told me a lot of things. She is indeed a good girl. For her to be able to sacrifice so much for you, she is indeed worthy of your love. I congratulate you." Nian Bing did not say anything more. When he really knew Feng Nu's identity, he understood that he and Feng Nu were originally people from two different worlds. He was also unwilling to hurt Long Ling in any way. Therefore, he could only cherish the last time he had with Feng Nu outside the cave. Jean allowed his clansmen to help him apply herbs to his wound. "Patriarch, are we just going to wait here?" a fiery dragon human warrior asked tentatively. Jean Anne's expression was somewhat weary. The strength of the mercenary group was beyond his expectations, especially Feng Nu's strength and the berserk purple purity sword. If not for them, those mercenaries would have already been buried here. Glancing at that clansman, Jean coldly said, "Could it be that you have forgotten the Dragon Lord's orders? Without his orders, no one is allowed to enter the Fire Dragon Cave." "But, what if those humans wake up the Dragon Lord? If that happens, I am afraid the Dragon Lord will blame us." Jean Anne's eyes shone with cold light. "If they are smart, they will not do that. Moreover, there are Feng people between them. They will not let them do that. Take 100 people to the top of the mountain. If they try to escape from there, you know what to do. Although there are 2 exits in the Fire Dragon Cave, they will not have any chance. I'm going to trap them in there. Let's see how long they can last. If they really wake up the Dragon Lord, then I can only mourn for them. I think even if the Dragon Lord blames us, it will not be too serious. I have already prepared many of his favorite dried snow fish." "Not good, Elder. Our seriously injured brothers are all dead." A fire dragon warrior hurriedly ran over. "What? How is that possible? Although their injuries are serious, with their recovery ability, it is impossible for them to die." Jean stood up abruptly, affecting the wound on his chest. His expression could not help but become even more unsightly. "Elder, it is poison. Moreover, it seems to be a highly toxic poison, specially targeted at our dragon-human clan. Our brothers all turned black and died. I think it must be that Feng people's woman. Her sword was poisoned." Jean Anne's body trembled. Although they were enemies, his impression of Feng Nu was surprisingly good. It was not because Feng Nu was beautiful, but because she had always been merciful during the battle, even when she was in a state of extreme anger. She did not kill them. No, it can't be her. Otherwise, with her phoenix transformation, there is no need for her to poison us. Let's go, take me to see. With that, Jean walked into the forest under the guidance of his clansmen. He did not notice that the moment he entered the forest, an almost indistinguishable black figure quietly entered the cave. As time passed, the members of the Frozen Moon mercenary group gradually calmed down. Li Hua, Feng Yun, and Long Ling took out some ready-to-eat food and water from the spatial magic items for everyone to eat and drink. After careful counting, all of the 39 people, except for Long Ling, Li Hua, and Feng Yun, had suffered some degree of injury. Among them, 23 were seriously injured. Most of them were barely able to move. Fortunately, none of them were dead. Nian Bing and Feng Nu had already returned to the crowd. With the help of Long Ling, his injured shoulder was treated again. Li Hua used the magical power he had accumulated for a long time to cast a 7th-level water healing spell on Nian Bing. Only then did Nian Bing's pain lessen a little. However, the water healing spell could only heal his wounds at most. It could not connect his broken bones and meridians. In this situation, there was no better way in this cave. Nian Bing simply told Li Hua, Carlo, Gatling, and Huarue about Feng Nu's guess about the cave. Hearing that there was a possibility of escaping, everyone was immediately excited. Carlo hesitated for a moment and said, Nian Bing, what if we only take that bottle? After all, that is the employer's. We are already here. Nian Bing interrupted Carlo's words and said resolutely, What time is it now? You still care about these things. We are already lucky to be able to go back alive. Only by abandoning greed can we have a chance to survive. Can wealth be compared to life? Carlo sighed, then he nodded and said, All right, then this matter is settled. I will restrain my subordinates. Nian Bing frowned slightly. From Carlo's tone, he did not feel any resolute emotion. At this time, did he still have any illusions? At this moment, for the first time, he felt that it was reasonable for mercenaries to be classified as a low-level guild. If someone tries to make a move on those treasures, I think I will not be polite. In order to survive, I don't mind killing. Feng Nu supported herself with the godly sword of parting heaven, and slowly walked over. The trembling on her body had already disappeared. Nian Bing's Xingyang saber was in her arms. With the roar of the fire god, after resting for a period of time, she had recovered some of her strength. Seeing Feng Nu appear, Carlo's expression suddenly became a little more awkward. Miss Feng Nu, don't misunderstand. I will definitely restrain my subordinate. You can rest assured. We don't want to be buried here. Feng Nu nodded and said, That's for the best. For everyone's lives. After some discussion, everyone decided to rest for a few days. At least let their injuries recover a little. In any case, they still had enough food and water. If they were in a better state, their chances of escaping would be higher. As Nian Bing's right arm was heavily injured, Zi Qingmeng, who was also a chef, became the mercenary group's chef. However, she could not start a fire, and could only be assisted by Nian Bing. The sky outside was already dark, and for the wounded, dinner was their greatest enjoyment. Nian Bing brought Zi Qingmeng to a deeper part of the cave. This was a space similar to a stone room. Nian Bing smiled bitterly and said, There is nothing to burn here, so we can only use the molding method. Miss Zi, I'll have to trouble you. Zi Qingmeng sighed and said, What trouble, we've already reached this point. Let's get out of here alive first. As she spoke, she inserted a few samurai swords into the ground. Nian Bing took out an iron pot from her space ring, and with a variety of spices and food materials, this place had already become a simple kitchen. Miss Zi, frankly speaking, do you regret participating in this mercenary group's operation with me? Zi Qingmeng glanced at Nian Bing and said, If I said no, then I would definitely be lying to you. However, what's the use of regretting now? Let's get out of here first. Don't call me Miss Zi, just call me Qingmeng. Didn't you say that we were friends? Nian Bing was a little flattered. He smiled and said, "How rare! It's rare to see you so polite." Zi Qingming snorted and said, "I just hate your arrogance and unfaithfulness." Arrogance? Am I? Unfaithfulness? That's not a word to describe me. Nian Bing tried hard to forget the injury on her right arm, her tone relaxed. As if she wasn't in danger at all. Zi Qingming said, "How could it not be? Before you came to the academy, I was always the youngest and most talented chef. But when you came, everything was disrupted. Your cooking skills are even better than uncle's. Although you usually have a smile on your face, the arrogance in your bones can't be concealed. As for Huaxin, look, you only have 2 girls by your side now. Isn't that called Huaxin?" Nian Bing helplessly shook her head and walked over to the iron pot and sat down. "You can think whatever you want. Today you're the chef. I believe that the food you cook will taste good. Everyone is injured, so just make some noodles that are easy to digest. I've got some noodles here, by the way. Speaking of which, I specially prepared them for myself." Zi Qingming watched Nian Bing take out a bag of flour from her space ring and couldn't help but smile. Although you magicians have many drawbacks, sometimes you do have an advantage that warriors can't compare to. Let's cooperate. It's a pity that your hand is injured. Otherwise, with your flexible hands, you'll definitely be able to make delicious noodles. Nian Bing's expression darkened and she said indifferently, "Even if my injury is completely healed, I don't know if I can use the flexible hands again. I can't even feel my right arm right now. Do you think I'll be able to knead noodles in the future?" Zi Qingming sadly said, "I'm sorry, Nian Bing shook her head and smiled. "A real man can pick up and let go. It's already like this, so what's the point of saying more? Don't worry, I'm fine. Let's start, don't let everyone wait too long." Although everything in the cave was simple and crude, Nian Bing had prepared a complete set of items. It was enough for her to use. Nian Bing leaned against the wall of the clay pot. Now was not the time for him to make a move. Watching others cook was a form of enjoyment for him. He released a low-level fireball spell to light up the cave. He saw Zi Qingming skillfully kneading the dough. Her movements were no different from when he had competed with Zi Xiu. The only difference was that her level of proficiency and control of strength was much lower. "Qingming, have you also learned the heavy eagle hands?" Nian Bing asked curiously. Zi Qingming nodded and said, "This is one of the top skills in the world of cooking, so of course I've learned it. Unfortunately, Uncle said that I'm a woman, so I have an innate problem with the heavy eagle hands. It's not easy to master. So, although I've practiced it for a long time, I haven't been able to grasp its essence." Nian Bing smiled and said, "It's a good thing for a girl to learn cooking. In the future, you'll definitely be able to marry a good husband." Zi Qingming's pretty face turned red and she angrily said, "You're injured like this and your mouth is still not honest. Rest for a while, I'll call you when I need to boil water." Nian Bing grunted and closed his eyes. While maintaining the flame in his hands, he entered a meditative state. His body was indeed too weak. Soon, the dough was kneaded. Zi Qingming's method of making noodles was very simple. She kneaded the dough into a ball and only needed to use a knife to cut it. Previously, when Nian Bing set up the pot, he had already condensed a large block of ice inside. In order to save magic, he didn't use fire magic to melt the ice. Instead, he left it there and let it melt on its own. Zi Qingming placed the noodles on the chopping board and turned her gaze to Nian Bing. Just as she was about to call him to start the fire, she found that his breathing was even, as if he had already fallen asleep. At this time, Nian Bing still looked as handsome as ever. His weakness didn't affect his temperament at all. On the contrary, it added a bit of melancholy to his aura. Zi Qingming's heart rippled and she sighed, but she was reluctant to call him up. Looking around, she quickly thought of something. Using the weapon she had previously brought, she set up a shelf above Nian Bing's outstretched hand so that the low-grade flame could reach it. Then she placed a small pot on top of it and the temporary stove was completed. Zi Qingming laughed and thought that this artificial stove was really interesting. She didn't hesitate and poured oil into the pot and then began the process of cooking the noodles. With the addition of ingredients and ingenious cooking, a fragrant aroma filled the cave. It had been a long time since she had cooked. Zi Qingming couldn't help but feel a bit proud. It seemed that her skills hadn't deteriorated. She then scooped some melted ice water from the pot and went to the side to carefully wash her knife. In the previous battle, her knife was also stained with blood. Now that she thought about it, she couldn't help but secretly smile bitterly. It was indeed inappropriate to use a kitchen knife as a weapon. Fortunately, this was a time of crisis. Otherwise, if the diners knew that she used a knife to chop noodles, who knew what they would think? "Smells good, smells good, smells good." A voice suddenly sounded out, startling Zi Qingming. She subconsciously turned around to look, but didn't see anyone. Everything was still the same. "Humph, you scared me." She walked a few steps to Nian Bing's side and lightly kicked his leg. "Hey, don't pretend, I know you woke up a long time ago." Nian Bing awoke from his meditation. He was really too tired before, and just as he was about to enter the state of meditation, he fell asleep. Fortunately, he still had the feeling of maintaining the flame technique, so the flames on his hand didn't extinguish. He rubbed his eyes and said, "Are the noodles done? Then let's start making the braising." "What are you pretending for? You suddenly spoke and scared me. Don't you know that you can scare people to death?" Zi Qingming looked at him with some dissatisfaction. "Me? When did I say anything? You must have heard wrong," Nian Bing said inexplicably. Zi Qingming frowned and said, "Besides me, there's only you here. If you didn't say anything, then did I run into a ghost?" Nian Bing helplessly said, "Are you sure that was really my voice?" Zi Qingming paused for a moment, then thought for a moment and said, "You were the one who made that strange noise to scare me. That voice seemed to be a little louder than yours." Nian Bing shook his head. Okay, I was just scaring you. Let's hurry up and cook." "Hey, your braising is done. Let me smell it, it smells good. It should be authentic eggplant braising." "Not bad, if I tried it, I might not be able to reach your level." After being praised by Nian Bing, Zi Qingming couldn't help but forget her previous unhappiness. She smiled and said, Okay, let's boil the water and cook the noodles." With the help of Nian Bing, a large pot of noodles was ready in a short time. There was no need to eat, just the smell of the noodles and the fragrance of the braising was enough to make people drool. Although Zi Qingming was only a sword master level warrior, it didn't take much effort for her to carry 2 large and small bowls. The two went back the way they came and delivered food to the mercenaries. Chapter 64. However, they did not notice that just as they left, a swallowing sound came from the depths of the cave. It was mixed with an angry voice. "Damn it, why is this cave so small? It smells so good, so good, so good. Forget it, I'll go to sleep. The food made by a few bugs can't be that good. Yes, it definitely won't be good. Sleep, sleep." After resting for 3 whole days, everyone's injuries had improved. The injury on Nian Bing's shoulder had already healed. However, this wasn't a good thing for him. His bones and tendons had been broken, and the superficial healing didn't mean anything. His arm was temporarily crippled. The better news was that Zi Qingjian was awake. Because he had not used up all his energy, he was still as lively as ever after recovering. "President Carlo, I think we should explore the cave first. The injured should stay here first. When we find a way out, we'll come back to get them," Nian Bing said. Carlo nodded and said, "Nian Bing, your injuries aren't light. Why don't you stay as well? The few of us and Lady Phoenix will be enough." Nian Bing shook her head. "I'm fine. I still have many scrolls on me. Who knows, they might be able to help you. Master Li Hua, how's your mana recovery?" Li Hua said, "It's fully recovered. I'll go with you. Everyone can look after each other." After some discussion, they decided that Feng Nu, Zi Qingjian, Carlo, Jia Tailin, Nian Bing, and Li Hua would enter the cave to search for a way out. The others would rest and wait for news. They would leave their extra items where they were. Nian Bing and the rest of the 6 moved forward lightly. Feng Nu walked at the front, followed by Zi Qingjian. Nian Bing was injured, so she walked at the back of the group. She used her flame technique to illuminate the way for everyone. Before leaving, Nian Bing had asked about Feng Nu's injuries. Feng Nu told her that she had recovered about 50%. However, her vitality was severely damaged. It would take several months for her to fully recover. The cave was indeed very deep. Its size fluctuated between large and small. At its smallest, one had to bend down to pass through. In a large area, 6 people could walk side by side. The deeper they went, the higher the temperature became. Fortunately, the ventilation in the cave was smooth. Although it was a little hot, it was still bearable. After walking for an hour, the cave ahead was still deep and serene. Feng Nu turned around and glanced at Nian Bing, who was at the back of the group. Nian Bing nodded at her, indicating that she was fine. At this moment, they suddenly discovered that there was a turning point in the deep cave ahead. There seemed to be some kind of light flickering behind the turning point. They looked at each other silently and raised their vigilance at the same time. Feng Nu pulled out the parting heaven sword. Zi Qing's sword also took the heavy sword from his back. Nian Bing and Li Qi both recited the magic they were best at, ready to react at any time. After turning the corner, everything in front of him changed drastically. The 6 of them exclaimed softly almost at the same time, and all stopped in their tracks. What appeared in front of them was an indescribably huge cave. The cave went from the bottom to the top, and the sky directly penetrated it. Just by looking at it, this huge cave was probably at least 10,000 feet high. It was completely hollow in the mountainside, and the spacious space was enough to easily accommodate 10,000 people. But what surprised them most were the 2 mountains in front of them. One was a treasure mountain shining with colorful light, and the other was a mountain of flesh formed by a huge creature. The 7-colored treasure mountain was piled up to a height of 30 feet. All kinds of treasures sparkled under the sky. The treasures were mainly gemstones, but there was no lack of strange objects. There were even some weapons that seemed to be of excellent quality. What attracted Nian Bing the most was a few boxes made of jade in the Military Alliance's treasure mountain. Based on his knowledge in the library, it was clearly used to store books. If Carlo's information was correct, he was afraid that the ancient magic book he wanted to get was in there. Carlo swallowed a mouthful of saliva and murmured, "Oh my God! I'm afraid this pile of treasures can be compared with the national treasury of any country. Fortunately, I didn't let Huarei come. Otherwise, I'm afraid she couldn't help it." Nian Bing walked to Feng Nu's side and whispered, Is this really a dragon? Why does it look like a real dragon?" Feng Nu smiled bitterly and said, "It seems that our luck is really good. You're right. This is a real dragon, a fire dragon." Although Nian Bing had already vaguely guessed it, he couldn't help but tremble, and his eyes showed a look of horror. The gigantic body lying beside the book was exactly the same as the wind attribute giant dragon he had seen before, except that its body was a bit bigger. Its dragon scales were red in color, and its body was nearly 30 meters long. 2 gigantic dragon wings were spread out, covering its gigantic body on the ground. It had a pair of antlers on its head, whiskers on the corners of its mouth, and pearls on its forehead. Its entire body was covered in golden red scales. Although its eyes were closed, its formless aura told everyone that it was definitely an extremely dangerous creature. The dragon master that the fire dragon humans referred to was not a semi-dragon, but a true fire dragon. Nian Bing could not help but feel fearful of it. Feng Nu, what should we do now? Nian Bing's gaze fell on the beauty beside him. Feng Nu chuckled, pointed up, and said, "Since there's a way out, of course we should leave." Nian Bing stared blankly and said, "You don't seem to be worried?" Feng Nu smiled and said, "What's there to worry about? A real dragon is even more thirsty than a dragon. As long as you don't touch its treasures and don't have any ideas about it, even if you shout beside it, it won't wake up. Our luck is really good. Don't worry, to us, a real dragon is not as dangerous as a dragon. Of course, that's when it's not awake. I'll remind you again, no one should touch those treasures. Otherwise, the dragon will kill us as easily as crushing an ant. Carlos saw Feng Nu looking at him and hurriedly said, "Being able to see a real dragon is already a good experience for us. You can rest assured that I don't have any ideas about these treasures. Although I'm not young anymore, it's not a big problem to live for another 20 years. I still want to go back and enjoy my retirement. What should we do now? We should think of a way to get out, right?" Nian Bing said, "I'll go out first. However, this hole is much higher than we thought. I'm afraid it won't be easy to get a long rope. Feng Nu, my magic should be able to support the two of us to get out. We'll think of a way after we get out." Feng Nu nodded. Just as Nian Bing was about to use Blizzard, a change suddenly happened. In the blink of an eye, a black shadow rushed to the pile of 7 colored treasures at a speed that was difficult to see with the naked eye. With a boom, the treasures exploded and scattered in all directions. The black shadow reached into the pile and pulled out a black bottle. A strange laugh sounded. "Haha, thank you for opening the way for me, you idiots, for being my scapegoat." Nian Bing and the others reacted at this time. They saw that it was a person covered in a black cloak. They couldn't see his appearance from the outside at all. The whole person was wrapped in a black fog. The light in his eyes shone brightly. "Dark mage." An angry roar suddenly sounded. Strange things happened on the ground. The fire dragon let out an incomparably angry roar. "Who touched my treasures? Go to hell." A dark red light shot out from one of the dragon's claws and went straight to the body of the man in black. The man in black didn't dare to fight directly. His body was wrapped in the black fog and floated to the side. With a loud bang, a hole with a diameter of 3 meters appeared in the solid mountain wall under the angry attack of the dragon. The whole interior of the cave rose sharply. Even the debris didn't scatter. The place where the explosion hit was completely dark. "You can play with the dragon. I won't accompany you." The cold voice was full of excitement. They watched as he crushed a scroll. A white hexagram appeared under his feet. With a flash of light, he disappeared completely. Not even a trace of breath was left. Nian Bing and Li Hua sucked in a breath of cold air at the same time. They discovered that the scroll used by the other party was actually a 10th rank spatial magic scroll that shouldn't have existed, Distant Call. Nian Bing had seen an introduction to Distant Call in the top floor of the Ice Moon Empire's Magicians Guild library. It was known as the best escape scroll. However, this scroll was something that even an archmage couldn't make. Not to mention that there were no spatial archmages on the continent. This scroll could allow the user to instantly reach a place with a guiding magic array thousands of miles away. It was a long-distance transmission magic. If there was a spatial archmage, chanting this spell would take the time of a meal. It would also consume all of their magic power to succeed. Such a precious scroll couldn't be described in terms of value. The 6 of them stood there in a daze. Right now, they weren't thinking about where the black-clothed man had come from or why he was doing this. Instead, they were thinking about how to deal with the infuriated fire elemental dragon that had completely stood up. Chuanan stood there like a mountain. His huge dragon wings were spread out to both sides, spanning over 100 feet. The fiery red dragon breathed freely in and out of his mouth. His dark red eyes were filled with intense anger. They had all seen the power of the attack just now. Even if Feng Nu was in peak condition, she probably wouldn't be able to withstand it. Facing the most powerful creature on the continent, the 6 of them were ashen-faced. They looked at the dragon, not knowing what to do. Nian Bing was the first to react. She coughed and said tentatively, "Respected Mr. Dragon, we are not in cahoots with that thief. If you don't have anything else to say, we won't disturb your sleep." The dragon lowered its head. Despicable human, are you talking to me? However, that person clearly said that it was you who brought him here. Moreover, he stole the sealing bottle of Mordos that was under my care. This is all your fault. Do it. I'll give you a chance. As long as you can damage one of my scales, I'll let you leave. Let's do it. If we shrink back, we'll be stabbed. If we stick our head out, we'll be stabbed. Zi Qingjian roared angrily. Wielding his heavy sword, he charged towards the giant dragon. Carlo sighed inwardly. Together with Gatling, he charged towards Zi Qingjian as well. Li Ji had already prepared his water dragon spell. They could only hope for a fluke now. Don't do it! Feng Nu's cry of alarm interrupted Nianbing, who was preparing to cast a spell. The fiery red figure blocked in front of the dragon like lightning. Flaming sky godly sword transformed into a dazzling sword shadow. With a clang, Zi Qingjian, Carlo, and the Gatling gun were knocked back, and then met Li Hua's 8th grade attack spell. Flaming sky godly sword was swung without leaving a single gap. Feng Nu was afraid that she would miss something. The spell was controlled by Li Hua. Based on Feng Nu's performance of bravely saving everyone a few days ago, Li Hua was very convinced of her words. The water dragon spell had just come into contact with Feng Nu when it was immediately withdrawn. Even so, the weak Feng Nu couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. She staggered on the ground and almost fell. Nianbing hurriedly ran forward to support Feng Nu. Feng Nu, what are you doing? Feng Nu gasped for breath. I'm saving your lives. She turned around and faced the fire dragon. Who would have thought that even someone as powerful as you would use such tricks to deceive us? The fire dragon snorted. You're the descendant of the little damned bird, right? No wonder you know the rules. Feng Nu calmly looked at the fire dragon and said, So it's true. I was just guessing, but now you've confirmed it. The dragon god left you 7 giants to guard the human world. In order to prevent the balance of the human world from being affected by you, he set the rules. Unless humans attack you or invade you, you're not allowed to take the initiative to attack humans. I'm not wrong, right? You know that it's not our fault that the black bottle was stolen, but you just lured my companions to attack. You wanted to kill us. Hearing this, Li Hua and the others realized that their lives were saved by Feng Nu. If Feng Nu hadn't taken the risk of being injured to block their attacks, they would have been destroyed by the fire dragon's powerful counterattack. Don't call me a giant dragon. I'm the Dragon King, the great fire dragon king Garamandes. You're very smart, but do you think you can escape your fate like this? If the dragon god knows that the sealing bottle of Mordos was stolen, he will also blame me. Although I can't take the initiative to kill you, it's easy to trap you here and let you starve to death. Don't think that I don't know anything just because I'm sleeping. I know the situation when you fought with my servants. You came here for my treasure. You gave it up because you wanted to live. It can be seen that you are also despicable humans. Leaving your lives is the right choice. Nianbing supported Feng Nu and said in a clear voice, Garamandes, although I don't know what the sealing bottle of Mordos is, I think it should be very important to you. If we promise to help you find this bottle, will you let us go? Despicable humans, I won't believe what you say. The sealing vial of Mordos was stolen by you cunning humans. Do you think I will believe you humans? I won't let you go. Honorable Dragon King, I know that the black-clothed man just now is very cunning. He deliberately let us lead the way to steal your black bottle. But I swear, I will definitely retrieve the sealing bottle of Mordos for you. Nianbing said in a clear voice. Yes, as long as you give us a deadline, we will definitely retrieve the sealing bottle of Mordos for you. I swear on the blood of the phoenix. Feng Nu followed Nianbing and said, Don't think that swearing on the blood of that lousy bird is amazing. If the sealing bottle of Mordos is opened, even if the phoenix blood disappears, it won't be able to bear it. No, I have to contact the other 6 old guys quickly. Recover the sealing bottle of Mordos, and don't let its seal be undone. Otherwise, this world will probably never be peaceful again. Sigh. Forget it, for the sake of that lousy bird helping me back then, I won't pursue the matter. But in the human world, you must pay attention to the news of the dark mage and don't let the sealing bottle open. I'm leaving, don't have any ideas about my treasure. Get up and call your people over, I'd better take you out. Thank you, Dragon King, thank you, Dragon King. Big Brother Ziqing, please go and call everyone. Nian Bing took over from Dragon King. Alright, I'll go right away. Ziqing quickly ran back to the small path he had taken. After a few minutes, everyone came to Dragon King's hall one after another. Looking at the mountain of gold and silver treasures, everyone's eyes lit up. Before anyone could react, Hua Xian screamed loudly and rushed to the treasure mountain. Don't! Carlos stretched out his right hand and stopped her repeatedly. But it was too late. Dragon King's left wing fanned, and a powerful whirlwind blew. Hua Xian's fat and dry body had already hit the rocks around the hall. At this time, the mercenaries discovered the mountain of flesh on the side. Her entire body trembled, and she was no longer moved. Okay, let's go. Dragon King released a dark red light and blocked everyone's path. He spread out his wings and a strong wind swept everyone up to the cave above them. When they came out of the cave, they were already halfway up the center of the Tiandang mountain range. Nian Bing looked back. The huge cave faced the sky and was surrounded by faint trees. Thick clouds floated in the distance. From afar, the color of the cave and the green forest complemented each other. With the cover of the clouds, it was no wonder they couldn't see it when they came. Nian Bing said, I don't know any martial arts. That was only a low-level ice magic, the ice arrow technique. I can't kill people, but killing a pigeon isn't a big problem. Feng knew you have to know that in the eyes of a chef, as long as it's edible, it's an ingredient. Since you don't have any ingredients here, I can only make some myself. Feng Nu looked at Nian Bing with dissatisfaction. I didn't expect you to be such a cruel person. Nian Bing smiled and said, Am I cruel? Then you just don't eat them later. As he said that, he walked to the corner and picked up the 2 pigeons. After 8 years of cultivation, his spiritual power had reached a very high level. The ice arrow he shot earlier had directly shattered the 2 pigeons' heads and didn't cause them much pain. Holding the 2 pigeons, Nian Bing walked past Feng Nu. Seeing her somewhat sluggish expression, he smiled and said, Pigeons are very nutritious and have the effect of strengthening the body and kidney. Since you said I'm cruel, you don't need to see how I deal with them. After saying that, he directly walked to the kitchen. No, I want to see. Feng Nu stubbornly glared at Nian Bing and followed him into the kitchen. Nian Bing took a basin and poured some water. Returning to the courtyard, he quickly removed all the feathers on the pigeons, took out their internal organs, and washed the pigeons. Looking at the bloody scene in front of her, Feng Nu repeatedly frowned. She reluctantly insisted on staying beside Nian Bing and continued to watch. Nian Bing smiled slightly. With a flip of his wrist, he took out the morning dew dagger. Under the command of his spiritual power, his magical power easily froze the blood and internal organs in the basin into ice. He turned the basin upside down and gently knocked the ice out of the basin. Nian Bing held the 2 washed pigeons in one hand and softly chanted, Scorching fire, burst forth the passion in your heart and explode between heaven and earth. Bursting flames magic. A solid fireball appeared in front of him. Nian Bing's eyes flashed and the fireball with a diameter of 5 inches exploded. With a bang, the entire piece of blood ice completely disappeared. Other than a faint flow of water vapor, there was no trace left. Feng Nu stared blankly at Nian Bing. You know 2 types of magic? Ice and fire, how is that possible? Nian Bing smiled and said, Nothing is impossible in this world. As long as you dare to think and dare to do it, your fantasy can become reality. When I was learning cooking from my master, I often used this method to destroy garbage. How about it, it didn't leave any trace on the ground. ice and fire will turn into water vapor. When I froze the blood, the pigeon's internal organs have already been completely integrated with the ice. Under the bombardment of bursting flames, they naturally disappeared. Bursting flames was a level 3 magic. It required the strength of an intermediate magician to cast, and its explosive power was extremely strong. After returning to the kitchen with the pigeons, Nian Bing grabbed one of the pigeons by its leg and lifted it up. Because of Nian Bing's cruelty to the pigeons, Feng Nu's good impression of him had already dropped by a lot. She leaned against the kitchen door, waiting to see what he was going to do. She was surprised to find that Nian Bing seemed to have completely changed when he held the pigeon in his left hand. He stood there as steady as a rock, and his sharp eyes were completely focused on the pigeon, as if he was observing something. Suddenly, he moved. Feng Nu only saw a cyan blue brilliance floating out. The brilliance was so gorgeous. Nian Bing's right hand was like a phantom, constantly flipping and flashing. One after another, almost identical strands of flesh were constantly piling up on the chopping board below. Although she couldn't see the shadow of the knife clearly, Feng Nu was surprised to find that under the flickering cyan blue brilliance, the pigeon in Nian Bing's hand had gradually turned into a skeleton. In just a few blinks of an eye, Nian Bing had already changed to another pigeon. The cyan blue brilliance was still flickering. When the two skeletons appeared on the chopping board, there was already an even pile of flesh beside them. Nian Bing took out a white handkerchief from his bosom and wrapped it around the knife. Frost swirled on the morning dew knife, leaving no trace behind. Nian Bing smiled and walked to the front of the stove. With a point of his left hand, a fireball hit the firewood and the flames started to burn. The pot on the stove was still considered clean. The two pigeon skeletons were directly thrown into the pot, and he poured in some water from the side. But just as the water reached the skeletons, he stopped. He closed the lid of the pot and said with a smile, "The original soup melts the original food so that the nutrients can be completely absorbed." Feng Nu looked at Nian Bing with a dumbfounded expression and muttered, "You really don't learn martial arts? Your knife is so fast." She was very clear that although she cultivated Do Qi, the speed of her wrist was definitely not as fast as Nian Bing's. Nian Bing smiled and said, "My knife technique can only cut vegetables and meat, and it's just a simple knife. It's not like you, who cultivated Senior Huatian's 9 abandonment Do Qi. Unfortunately, I want to focus on cultivating magic. Otherwise, I might ask you for some knowledge on Do Qi. You only have salt here, so I won't make pigeon stew. I'll just make pigeon meat rice for you." As he said that, he took out a small square cloth bag from his waist and opened it on the chopping board. Inside the cloth bag were small cloth bags, and on each bag was an object of different sizes. The largest was a small knife, and the smallest was a long needle. There were a total of 10 objects, and most of them were needle-shaped objects. Feng Nu curiously asked, "What are these things for? Why do they look like doctors? Could it be that you also know acupuncture?" Nian Bing smiled and said, "Needles are not only used for acupuncture, they are also good for cooking." As he said that, he took out a basin from the side and scooped some rice. After washing it with water, he placed it beside him. His left hand picked up a grain of rice, and his right hand picked up the second thinnest needle from the cloth bag. As soon as the needle entered his hand, the tip of the needle immediately turned red and emitted a trace of heat. With a shake of his wrist, the fire magic needle directly pierced into the grain of rice that he picked up with his left hand. At the same time, with a flick of his left hand's little finger, a tendril of meat passed through the hole at the end of the needle. Unexpectedly, it was like a silk thread, and the needle came out from the other end of the rice. The rice grain was actually pierced by the tendril of meat. Following that, Nian Bing's movements began to speed up. One grain of rice after another was continuously pierced by the needle, and unexpectedly, the tendril of meat was cleverly pierced into a string. Miraculously, the surprise in Feng Nu's eyes became more and more intense. How was this cooking? It was clearly like making a perfect piece of art. The complicated project was continuously performed by Nian Bing. His hands were like illusions, and there was not a trace of delay, and there was not a trace of error. However, even with his speed, when all the tendril of meat had completely pierced through the rice grain, an hour had already passed. Looking at the rows of rice grains, Nian Bing smiled. This technique of using tendril of meat to pass rice was something that he had combined with magic. Without a burning fire needle, it was simply impossible to pierce through every grain of rice so evenly. The rice grains were like a curtain of beads that were placed flat on the chopping board. Nian Bing turned around and opened the lid of the pot. The soup boiled from the pigeon bones emitted a faint fragrance amidst the steaming steam. He took a ladle from the side and carefully picked out the pigeon bones from the pot. Looking at the milky white soup, he slightly hesitated for a moment before turning around and muttering a few words. A faint blue light enveloped the rice grains on the chopping board, and unexpectedly, the rice that had been pierced by the tendril of meat was frozen into a block. Taking out the morning dew dagger, he gently picked up the frozen rice and directly placed it into the pot. After sprinkling a thin layer of salt on the ice cubes, he covered the pot with the lid and returned the morning dew dagger to its sheath. Turning around, he said to Feng Nu, who had already sunk into a daze, "All right, it will be ready to eat after cooking for about an hour. Although the pigeon meat rice tastes good, it's a pity that it's a waste of time. I'll have to trouble you to wait a little longer." Feng Nu looked at Nian Bing with a strange gaze. Are you cooking? If this was made by an ordinary chef, I'm afraid that it would take more than a day to finish. Nian Bing laughed in spite of himself. A day? If it took a day, the shredded pigeon meat would already be inedible. Just making it looks good doesn't have any practical significance. You can come to a conclusion after tasting it. The two of them walked out of the kitchen. Feng Nu's previous unhappiness had already vanished into thin air after witnessing Nian Bing's miraculous cooking skills. Moving two wooden stools, the two of them sat down in the courtyard. Nian Bing appeared to be a little tired. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the tall ancient tree outside the courtyard wall. Piercing the rice with tendril of meat required complete concentration. Doing so much at once was like controlling a huge magic spell. Even he himself could not explain why he would make such a complicated pigeon meat rice for Feng Nu. Although it sounded simple, the simpler the cooking, the more it showed the chef's skills. Chapter 65. Nian Bing felt his muscles and bones regenerating continuously. It was so strange. Nian Bing's heart became even more active. The fire giant dragon Garamandi in front of him was no longer that scary. At least, under certain circumstances, he could definitely win. However, Nian Bing had some doubts in his heart. He was obviously a fire dragon, so where did this light magic come from? However, no matter what doubts he had now, it was not as good as the joy of his seriously injured body quickly recovering. Everything was possible now that he had regained his food. The soreness was getting stronger and stronger. Under the cover of the golden light, all the negative feelings in his body were constantly disappearing. He tried to move his right arm. The familiar feeling had been restored, and he could freely control his right arm again. He pulled off the cloth wrapped around the wound and saw that the originally terrible wound had completely disappeared, leaving not even a scar. Suddenly, the golden light turned blue. It was the feeling of water, gentle water, constantly moistening his sore arm. Every time the water waves surged, it would make his right arm feel stronger. He moved the 5 fingers of his right hand, and they were still so flexible, as if he had never been injured. The light dimmed and disappeared, and the huge insight was silent. Everyone was shocked by the strange magic of the fire dragon Garamandis. Both light and water magic were actually used by him, who was a fire dragon. This strange scene was beyond the scope of everyone's understanding. Well, with the light repair and the water moistening, your arm is fine. Can we start now? It was as if Garamandi had just done a trivial thing. He lazily asked Nianbing for help. He smacked his huge dragon mouth, and his huge dragon eyes were full of desire. Nianbing smiled and said, "Of course. Please wait a moment." As he spoke, he took out his cooking tools one by one, and asked for some materials from Li Hua and Feng Yun. Under the watchful eyes of Garamandi, he suddenly frowned and looked at the dragon again. He seemed to be a little embarrassed and said, "Great Garamandes, I'm really sorry. Can you lend me something? Otherwise, I can't operate it." Garamandes was a little impatient and said, "Borrow something? Why are you so troublesome? What do you need to borrow that has to do with your cooking? Kid, if you lie to me, you know the consequences." Nianbing chuckled. "How would I dare to lie to you? However, as a chef, if I want to cook the best dishes, I need all kinds of tools. But all my handy tools have been taken away by you. How can I help you cook? Of course, those things already belong to you, so I want you to lend them to me first to cook for you. You know how to take advantage of people, but I know how to take advantage of them. Garamandian stage. Let's play on. Let's see who can play who to death." Garamandi's dragon claws were as nimble as human hands. He extended a dragon finger and pointed at the treasures he had just received from Nianbing. "You mean these are your kitchen knives?" Nianbing smiled and said, "That's right. Please lend them to me first. Don't worry, I'll definitely satisfy you." Garamandes said with dissatisfaction, "Humans are really a wasteful race. You're actually more wasteful than me. Here, here." With a wave of his dragon claw, the 3 divine blades and the holy brilliant stone were brought back to Nianbing under the support of a faint red light. Nianbing suppressed his surging emotions and bent down to pick up the sigh of the ice goddess and the roar of the fire god. The feeling of being connected to flesh and blood made his whole body tremble. "Old friends, you're back. Don't worry, no matter what, I won't let you leave me again." While thinking, he hurriedly put these things into his space ring. Without giving Garamandes a chance to be dissatisfied, Nianbing asked 2 mercenaries to help him set up the pot. After thinking for a while, he took out a large piece of pork ribs and said with a smile, "The things here are simple, so I'll make you a pork rib. I'm sure you'll like it." With Garamandes' huge body, Nianbing didn't cut the pork ribs into pieces and directly put them into the pot. Then, he used ice magic to condense several pieces of ice and put them into the pot. Then, he used fire magic to Rongbing, turning the ice into water and soaking that piece of pork ribs in it. Garamandes seemed to have forgotten about the others. He walked a few steps to Nianbing's side and lay down, curiously looking at his movements. "Kid, you know ice and fire magic?" Nianbing nodded and said with a smile, "I still can't compare to you. You know at least 3 types of magic, I only know 2. No, it's not the same. The light and water magic that I used were only simulated, but your ice and fire magic is something that you already have. This kind of constitution is really rare. However, your level of magic is too low. The magic in your body is in a mess, spinning and spinning. What's the point of that?" Nianbing didn't hear the latter part of the words. When he heard the word simulation, there was a loud bang in his mind. The originally heavy fog instantly shone through, as if a new door of magic had opened in front of him. The movements of his hands stopped, and he kept muttering the word simulation. He obviously thought of something, but he couldn't really grasp it. Garamandes raised his claw and lightly knocked on Nianbing's head, making him come back to his senses. "Hey, hurry up and cook, don't dawdle, I'm already hungry." Nianbing woke up and suppressed the excitement in his heart. He knew that now was not the time to ask. Even if it was over, Garamandes wouldn't tell him. He calmed his mind and rubbed his aching head, saying, "Great Garamandes, you don't know, after soaking the ribs in ice water, the meat will be even more tender. Haste makes waste, please wait a moment." Garamandes snorted and moved his head to the side of the pot, his eyes showing desire. "No matter how hot the tofu is, I can eat it in one bite. However, what is tofu?" Nian Bing patiently explained. Tofu is a kind of food made with beans as the main ingredient. It's very nutritious and delicious. If you want to eat it, I'll make it for you in the future. Good, good, good. There will be plenty of opportunities in the future. I'm already beginning to believe that you're a chef. Garamandi's voice became happy, just like a child. Everyone at the side was stunned. Nian Bing and the fire dragon Garamandis were together. Now, they didn't look like enemies at all. They were completely like friends talking to each other. The dragon's appearance at this time was very funny. Its fat buttocks were sticking out behind, and its thick dragon tail was swaying gently. One of its front claws supported its big head and looked at the pot, while the other dragon claw slowly knocked on the ground. That expression, that appearance, it was completely like a person. A diner thirsting for delicious food. Feng Nu turned and walked to the side of the cave wall. Come on, millionaire, rest for a while. We're ready to go out. Carlo came to Feng Nu's side and whispered, Miss Feng Nu, will that dragon really let us go? Feng Nu smiled and said, Don't tell me you still don't believe in Nian Bing's cooking skills? It's not difficult for him to satisfy this dragon's stomach. With Nian Bing's intelligence, there won't be a problem. Carlo said with some worry, Even if that dragon keeps his promise and lets us go, what about Nian Bing? This time, he came here because of our mercenary group. If I leave him alone, how can I be at ease? If we leave, if Nian Bing dies in the dragon's hands, then… Looking at Carlo's expression, Feng Nu couldn't help but have a good impression of him. She smiled and said, You can rest assured about this. At least Nian Bing's life is not in danger. I believe that as long as this dragon tastes his food, he will protect him like a treasure. She would protect him like a treasure and wouldn't bear to hurt him. As for how to leave here, it will depend on Nian Bing's wisdom. I heard that dragons are very greedy, but I didn't expect them to be greedy to this extent. Only when we leave first, Nian Bing can have no scruples. President Carlo, is the person who took away the black bottle your employer? Carlo froze for a moment, lowered his head and said, Maybe. Although his voice changed and his aura changed, his body shape didn't change. The dark magician still exists. It seems that the future of our mercenary group is not optimistic after we go back. Feng Nu shook her head and said, Not necessarily. Since that person is a dark magician, he must have some ulterior motive for obtaining the sealing bottle of Mordos that Garamandis said. You are just a mercenary group. Destroying you is not good for him. I think the real dark magician will not do anything bad for himself. Good person, let everyone rest for a while. While they were talking, Nian Bing had already started to act. He took out the ribs soaked in ice water and put them on the chopping board. He used a flame spell under the pot and began to heat the ice water. At the same time, he put in a dozen spices, such as pepper, onion, ginger slices, etc. Under the effect of the flame, the water in the pot boiled in a while. The aroma of all kinds of spices spread with the boiling water. Garamandis sniffed and exclaimed that it smelled so good. That excitement, he didn't look like a dragon that had lived for tens of thousands of years. Boy, when can you eat this ribs? I can't wait. Hurry up, hurry up. Garamandis kept urging. He was anxious, but Nian Bing wasn't anxious at all. He said calmly, The more delicious something is, the more troublesome it is to cook it. This is especially true for whole ribs like this. It's very difficult to get all the flavor into it. If you want it to taste good, there must be 3 conditions. First, the heat has to be evenly controlled. Second, the taste has to be evenly mixed. Third, it has to be a mixture of all kinds of flavors. If you want to eat ordinary stewed ribs, I can make it for you right away. If you want to eat the best ribs, then you have to wait a little bit. I don't know which one you want to eat. Garamandis swallowed a mouthful of dragon saliva and said bitterly, I'll wait, then I'll wait. How long will it take? I'm hungry. Nian Bing said indifferently, It won't be too long. Don't talk to me. If you disturb me, the taste of the food will change. Do you want to eat substandard food? No, 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 I won't disturb you. You do what you do. In order to eat delicious food, Garamandes had completely put down his pride. He blinked his dragon eyes and waited. Nian Bing laughed in his heart. Garamandes, oh Garamandes, as long as I control your stomach, I don't believe you will hurt me. As for who will control who in the future, I'm afraid it's not certain yet. Under the guidance of magic, the Holy Glory Pearl jumped into his hand. Nian Bing let the light of the Holy Glory Pearl shine on the ribs. After a few breaths, he put the Holy Glory Pearl away. He picked up a bottle of wine from the side and smeared it evenly on the ribs. After the first smear, he immediately took out the sai of the frozen goddess. Under the guidance of the ice element, the morning dew dagger made 256 light cuts on one side of the ribs, leaving 256 marks. After that, he turned the ribs around and used the righteous yang saber to make 256 marks. He then smeared the ribs with wine for the second time. As he smeared the ribs, he deliberately explained to Garamandes, the two different elements of ice and fire were mixed on this rib under the influence of the wine. Because I used different amounts of ice and fire elements, there are 9 different flavors. The wine can remove the fishy smell on the ribs and bring out the fragrance of the meat. With the addition of the ice and fire elements, the ribs can be cooked more easily and the meat tastes better. The great Garamandes, please start a fire here. A small fire will do. In order to eat the delicious ribs as soon as possible, Garamandes didn't have time to think about why Nian Bing asked him to start a fire. With a flick of his dragon finger, a pile of flames appeared on the ground. Nian Bing casually tossed the ribs onto the flames and flipped them. When they fell, Nian Bing used the morning dew dagger and the righteous yang saber to pick them up alternately so that the ribs would always be flipped upside down. The aroma of wine and meat filled the air in the roasting flames and mixed with the aroma of the seasoning soup. Garamandes had already unknowingly started drooling. The longing in his dragon eyes became even more intense. When the ribs were half cooked, Nian Bing stabbed the ribs with the morning dew dagger to stop the roasting process. He walked to the side of the pot and scooped out the various seasonings from the pot. Only a pot of soup with seasoning was left. After putting the ribs into the pot, Nian Bing closed the lid and muttered a few incantations. Purple flames rose from his hands and he pressed them on both sides of the pot to continuously transfer heat into the pot. At the same time, he turned his head to Garamandes and said, "Help me hold down the lid. Don't let any of the soup spill out. Otherwise, it will go out of flavor." "Okay." Garamandes swallowed a mouthful of saliva again and quickly pressed his dragon claws on the lid. The steam kept rising, but the lid could not be opened. Only traces of heat escaped from a few small holes on the lid. The aroma of the meat and the soup combined perfectly, emitting a tempting aroma. Not to mention Garamandes, even the mercenaries at the side kept swallowing their saliva. After a while, Nian Bing withdrew his magic and said, "All right, stop pressing." Garamandes raised his claws. Nian Bing opened the lid and quickly added some soy sauce and salt. He let the soup boil and let the seasonings mix with the soup and the ribs. It was very particular to add salt at the end of the stew. This was because, although it was easier to add salt at the beginning, it would be harder for the meat to be stewed and the taste would be much worse. She took out the proud heaven blade and cut a small piece of meat from the pot under Garamandes' fierce gaze. She blew on the hot air and sent it into her mouth to gently chew. Garamandes saw Nian Bing's intoxicated manner of eating and immediately became angry. He raised his dragon claws and was about to slap down to punish this human who dared to eat his food when he heard Nian Bing said, "Not bad. Although it was a little rushed, it was barely edible." Garamandes' dragon claws immediately stopped in mid-air and said excitedly, "Can I eat? That's great." The arduous wait finally came to an end. Nian Bing used the proud heaven blade to cut a small piece of rib meat and nodded to Garamandes. Garamandes did not hold back and directly reached his right claw into the boiling hot pot and grabbed the large piece of rib. He directly sent the whole piece into his mouth and chewed. The sound of smacking could be heard continuously, and Nian Bing frowned. The whole piece of rib was completely eaten by Garamandes in just a few chews. Nian Bing frowned and said, "How was the taste?" The great Garamandes. Garamandes' dragon eyes were filled with intoxication. "Delicious, it's really delicious." Nian Bing stared at him and said, "Is it only delicious?" Garamandes was puzzled and said, "Isn't it delicious enough? It is your honor that I, the great Garamandes, can say that the food you cook is delicious." This time it was Nian Bing's turn to snort disdainfully and said, "What kind of delicious food can you make by just swallowing it? You've wasted my efforts." Garamandes was surprised and said, "What's so special about eating? Isn't it all about chewing a few times and swallowing?" Nian Bing proudly said, "Cooking is special, eating is also special. Qingmeng, you come." Nian Bing called out to Zi Qingmeng. Zi Qingmeng walked in front of him with a puzzled expression. Nian Bing handed him the rib meat on the proud heaven blade and said, "Have a taste and then tell us, the great Garamandes, what kind of flavor does the rib taste like?" Zi Qingmeng took the proud heaven blade. He put the rib meat into his mouth and chewed slowly. After a long time, his eyes revealed a light of praise and said, "The rib meat has 100 different flavors because of your 2 kinds of magic. The rib meat is tender and fragrant but not greasy. The most peculiar thing is that the magic is used to maintain the flavor of the wine in the rib meat. The rib meat perfectly blends the flavor of the spices with the meat's own flavor. Combined with the rich wine and magic, it is truly a delicacy. Especially the control of the fire, it is perfect. I definitely can't make such a delicacy." Nian Bing took the proud heaven blade that Zi Qingmeng handed back and turned to Garamandes and said, "Did you hear that? You have to carefully taste the food that I make to understand its true essence. Only by knowing how to appreciate the food can you find the greatest enjoyment in it. If you eat it casually like this, you can only taste a little fragrance and can only comment that it's delicious. Don't you think it's a waste to eat such delicious food?" Garamandes blinked and muttered, "What you said makes sense, but what should I do?" Nian Bing smiled faintly and said, "Since you have decided to keep me here, then we will have plenty of time to compare notes about food. I can make many dishes, so shouldn't you fulfill your promise and send my friends out? As long as you want to eat, I can make delicious food for you at any time." Garamandes's eyes swept over the crowd and hesitated for a moment before saying, "All right, but I have one condition." Nian Bing frowned and said, "You have another condition? Great Garamandes, you must live up to the word great. Your words are like spilled water." Garamandes chuckled and said, "Of course I will keep my word. However, you little brat are obviously very cunning, so I have to be on guard. Otherwise, how can I control you in the future? How about this, you attack me once. This way, I will have the power to take your life at any time. With the threat of your life, I am not afraid that you will not comply. As long as you attack me, I will immediately send your friends out." A dragon that had lived for tens of thousands of years was definitely not easy to deal with. At this time, Nian Bing had no other choice. Without any hesitation, Nian Bing ignored Feng Nu, Long Ling and the others who were anxiously trying to stop her. She waved her proud heaven blade, and a wind blade floated out and chopped at Garamandes's body. However, it did not even leave a mark. Garamandes excitedly let out a dragon roar that shook the sky. A red light spread out from his huge body and instantly enveloped Feng Nu and the other 30 people. With a flap of his dragon wings, Nian Bing staggered and fell to the ground. Garamandes took Feng Nu and the others and flew into the sky. Long Ling shouted at Nian Bing with tears in her eyes, "Nian Bing, you must live. You promised to tell me something." Feng Nu also shouted, "Nian Bing, you must live. Only by living can you have a chance to take revenge. Perhaps I will consider becoming your girlfriend." Zi Qingmeng also shouted, "My brother and I will go to the capital of the Ottoman Empire to seek refuge with the Silver Feather mercenary group. If you can leave this place alive, you can find us there. Nian Bing smiled and waved at everyone. Her face did not reveal a trace of sadness. Feng knew, you must remember what you said. Ling give me a chance. Don't marry Shurjio. Tears flowed uncontrollably from Long Ling's beautiful eyes. Fool, I lied to you that day. I didn't get engaged at all. I was waiting for you in Ice Snow City. Even if it's for a lifetime. You promised Father that you would participate in the new magician conference. For us, you must live. You are annoying. Is it that interesting to part in life and death? Garamandes suddenly accelerated his flying speed. Long Ling and Feng Nu's voices could no longer be heard. Looking at their departing figures, Nian Bing's eyes were a bit blurred. This huge cave was accompanied by a dragon. Wanting to leave was easier said than done. Now she could only take one step at a time. She hoped that this great Garamandes would always like to eat. This way at least she could survive. She glanced at her right hand that was moving freely. Nian Bing simply sat down next to Garamandes' pile of treasures. He was neither optimistic nor pessimistic about his current situation. He recalled the word mimicry in his mind and pondered about how to cultivate his ice and fire magic. Instead of hoping for luck, it was better to work hard to improve his strength. Although he did not expect to be able to compete with the fire dragon Garamandes, as long as his strength improved, there would always be a chance. Since his parents were trapped in the Ice God Tower, he developed a tenacious character that would never give up. Not long after, the ground shook. The great Garamandes returned. Boy, I have fulfilled my promise and sent your friends away safely. Without any worries, Nian Bing looked coldly at Garamandes and said, So, I should thank you? That's right. My name is not Boy, my name is Nian Bing. Garamandes was slightly angry. Bastard, is this the tone you use to talk to the great Garamandes? Don't forget, you have already attacked me. I can take your life at any time. Nian Bing smiled indifferently. I am afraid you are not willing to. After eating my food, I don't believe that you will be interested in other food. How about we make an exchange? You tell me what magic mimicry is and I will teach you how to taste delicious food. How about it? Garamandes snorted and said, You are right. You have to remember, you are only a lowly human. You do not have the right to negotiate with the great Garamandes. As soon as his voice fell, Nian Bing felt his whole body tighten. He was already lifted up by Garamandes' huge dragon claw. A scorching aura invaded his body, and the cloth on his body suddenly turned into flying ash. Garamandes casually flung Nian Bing to the ground. His skin was immediately scraped by the uneven ground and dozens of scars appeared. The severe pain made Nian Bing groan. His mind became hazy and he immediately fainted. Hey, you can't be that weak, right? Garamandes saw that Nian Bing did not have any reaction after falling to the ground. He naturally did not care about Nian Bing's life or death, but he was very concerned about his food. This was something he had never experienced before. Fearing that Nian Bing would die like this, he hurriedly released a light magic on his body. The wound immediately healed. Garamandes probed the condition of Nian Bing's body. Only then did he feel relieved and lay down to sleep. When Nian Bing woke up, the sky above the cave had already turned dark. He found that his body did not feel any discomfort. Although the magic power in his body was not enough, he still had about 50% left. He used a flame magic to illuminate everything around him. The dragon Garamandes was lying there sleeping, and his treasures were sparkling under the light of the fire. His heart moved. He loudly shouted Garamandes' name, but the dragon was sleeping soundly. No matter how he called, there was no response. Nian Bing was delighted. Although he was not sure that he could escape, how could he know without trying? O great ice goddess, please lend me your anger and send us to the lost shore. Snowstorm. Ice elements condensed under his feet. Nian Bing carefully controlled the magic power. He did not let it out in the slightest. Using it, he slowly flew up, floating towards the top of the cave. The power of the snowstorm was not enough to carry him so high. However, he had the sigh of the ice goddess. With the help of the ice goddess stone, the power of the snowstorm was greatly enhanced. It carried his body higher and higher. At the beginning, Nian Bing was afraid of waking Garamandes, so he flew very slowly. But after 100 feet, Garamandes still did not respond. This discovery made him bolder. He sped up with all his might, using the snowstorm to send his body up. The cave entrance was getting closer and closer. Nian Bing could already see the stars in the night sky. The moon was like a jade plate hanging in the distant horizon. Seeing all this, his eyes could not help but moisten. Could he finally escape? Just as Nian Bing reached the top of the cave and was about to fly out, a huge head suddenly appeared in front of him. "Hey, Nian Bing boy, where do you think you're going?" The voice was familiar. A red light lit up the surroundings. The owner of the huge head was the fire dragon Garamandes. Nian Bing's heart sank. He was about to say something when Garamandes flicked his dragon claw. The snowstorm under his feet disappeared without a trace. When he wanted to use magic again, his body was already restrained by Garamandes' fire magic. The feeling of weightlessness came instantly. His body fell to the ground like a meteor. "It's over." This was Nian Bing's first thought after his body fell. Falling from such a height, not a single bone would be intact. The strong feeling of weightlessness made Nian Bing forget everything. Memories kept flashing in his mind. At this moment, the first thing he thought of was the desperate look in his parents' eyes before he activated the space scroll. "Dad, Mom, Nian Bing can't avenge you." Suddenly, his body became light. Nian Bing realized that something seemed to have caught his body. His original fall changed to a sideways movement. His whole body shook, and he was already spinning and floating. When he calmed down, he realized that he was actually on Garamandes's broad dragon back. "You want to run so quickly? You humans really don't have any credibility." Judging from the voice, Garamandes did not seem to be angry. After falling back to the bottom of the cave, Garamandes shook Nian Bing off his back. Then, he used his dragon claw to hold his body on the ground. As his body was releasing a red light that represented fire, Nian Bing could clearly see everything around him. He was smart enough not to ask Garamandes why he didn't kill him. He looked up at him and asked, "Are you hungry?" Garamandes was stunned. He obviously did not expect Nian Bing to have such a reaction. He nodded subconsciously and said, "The ribs you made are not enough to fill the gaps between my teeth." Chapter 66. Nian Bing chuckled and said, "Then I'll make you something to eat." Hearing this, Garamandes immediately became excited. Good, hurry up. Your friends left behind quite a lot of ingredients. It should be enough for me to eat a few meals. And I'll give you an honor, from now on, you'll be the chef of the great Garamandes. Nian Bing nodded and said, "Cooking is no problem, but I want to know, how did you get up there? Your body is so big, if you flew past me I should know." Garamandes snorted and said, "Idiot, did you forget what I said about mimicry? I can imitate light magic and water magic. Why can't I imitate space magic? A distance of several thousand feet, a mid-distance teleportation of the 7th step is enough." Nian Bing suddenly said, "So you're saying, you can imitate any type of magic? Even dark magic?" Garamandes said proudly, "Of course, we dragons are natural magic users. We can easily use the forbidden spells you humans speak of. Even magic of other types can be imitated based on our own magic. The magic of the West Lake is actually more or less the same, although the form of each magic element is different. As long as you grasp the changes of magic waves, you can imitate any type of magic you want. Of course, this is impossible for you humans, but we dragons can imitate other types of magic, including the 9th step and all types of magic below the 9th step." Imitate, although Garamandes said very vaguely, he still gave Nian Bing some hint. Imitate, since dragons can imitate, Then can humans and mages, to a certain extent, imitate magic? Maybe humans don't have the innate advantage of dragons, but she herself possesses both ice and fire magic. If one imitates the form of the other while using the two types of magic, then the two types of magic would no longer pose a threat. In that case, the ice and fire of the same origin would no longer pose any threat. Not only would it be more convenient for cultivation, but it would also be able to better display the power of the ice and fire of the same origin as long as there were some slight changes. However, in order to simulate them, he had to have a better understanding of the similarities and changes between ice and fire magic. This would take a long time to be able to achieve. Cooking for a dragon is definitely a very difficult job. How big is a dragon's stomach? The ingredients Nian Bing brought were enough to feed 30 people for a month. However, Garamandes ate a third of it in one meal. Although Nian Bing tried her best to make simple things, this meal still made her unbearably tired. She casually ate some food and sat at the side, gasping for breath. Garamandes slowly ate the delicious vegetables in front of him. Nian Bing, can you taste the best food by eating slowly like this? How come I didn't taste the changes you mentioned? Boss, don't forget, you're a dragon, after all, you're a dragon. How can a dragon's sense of taste the taste? It seems that your sense of taste is not sensitive enough. Naturally you can't taste the deliciousness. Garamandes stopped eating and said angrily, "Damn it, why didn't you say so earlier? You made me eat so many things but I still couldn't taste the best taste." Nian Bing was stunned and laughed. Say it earlier, what's the use of saying it earlier? Don't you still have to eat like this? Although they haven't known each other for long, Nian Bing found that other than being a little arrogant, this Garamandes didn't seem to be that difficult to get along with. At least when she was cooking for him, he was very obedient and even helped her. That desire for food was like a greedy child. Anyway, he couldn't leave this place for a while, so he might as well let go. Getting along with Garamandes wasn't that uncomfortable. Nonsense, of course it's useful to say it earlier. What's a human? If I turn into a human, won't I have a human's sense of taste? Under Nian Bing's surprised gaze, the red light around Garamandes's body suddenly moved like water waves, constantly concentrating on his huge body. Gradually, the red light became stronger and stronger, and the dazzling light made Nian Bing unable to see everything in front of her. When the red light suddenly disappeared, when Nian Bing recovered her vision, she was stunned to find that Garamandes's huge body had disappeared and was replaced by a person, a young man who looked about the same age as her. This person's height was about the same as Nian Bing, and he had a head of fiery red hair. Although he wasn't as handsome as Nian Bing, his body exuded a kind of domineering aura. His dark red warrior robe set off his perfect figure, and his aura gave people an extremely dangerous feeling. He laughed and said to Nian Bing, "How is it? You didn't expect it, right? There's nothing on this continent that the great Garamandes can't do." He awkwardly moved his human body, and in a flash, he was already in front of Nian Bing. Nian Bing was stunned. You're really Garamandes?" Garamandes raised his hand and knocked on her head. "Idiot, you forgot to add the word great." After turning into a human, his expression felt more real. In front of this person who was about the same age as her, Nian Bing couldn't help but reveal a bitter smile. A creature like a dragon really couldn't be guessed by the way humans thought. Garamandes continued to eat the vegetables in the big bowl. The taste is really different. A human's sense of taste is still better. Damn, I've really suffered a lot in the past. It seems that it's better to be human. Although he had turned into a human, his stomach was still a dragon's stomach, and his appetite didn't decrease at all. Only after he finished all the food made by Nian Bing did he pat his stomach in satisfaction and lie down on his pile of treasures. "Nian Bing, I finally experienced the taste changes you were talking about. It's really amazing. Are all the food you humans make so strange?" Nian Bing had already stabilized her mind while Garamandes was eating. She walked to his side and sat down, saying, Not all of them. However, to me, cooking is a special kind of culture, and the cooking culture of humans is vast and boundless. There are many delicious things that even I haven't seen before. Among humans, I am indeed an outstanding chef, but I can't say that I'm the best. Garamandes turned to look at Nian Bing in surprise. He said, "So you're saying that there are even more delicious things?" Nian Bing smiled, saying, "Of course there are. If there's a chance in the future, I can take you to see it." After Garamandes turned into a human, for some reason, Nian Bing's original fear disappeared a lot. "Great Garamandes, didn't you lose the sealing bottle of Mordas? Why don't you look worried at all?" Garamandes snorted and said, "What's there to be worried about? There is more than one sealing bottle of Mordas. There are a total of 6, and they are with me and the other 5 Dragon King, except for the Dark Dragon King. Unless we get all of them, one is useless. We must get it back, but we're not in a hurry." Nian Bing asked curiously, "What is this sealing bottle of Mordas? Does it need you 6 dragons to protect it?" Garamandes's expression changed slightly and said, "You don't need to know this. Knowing this secret won't do you any good. Also, remember, I'm the Dragon King. Not a dragon." "Dragon King? What's the difference between a Dragon King and a dragon? Weren't you sent by the Dragon God to protect the continent?" Nian Bing's curiosity was very strong. Garamandes said proudly, "After the ancient war, many races on the Yangon continent were destroyed. The divine realm felt that we dragons were not suitable to survive on this continent, because we were too strong for humans. So they asked the dragon god to take us dragons to the divine realm. At that time, the dragon god decided to leave a dragon king in each faction to protect the continent, and let us 7 dragon kings choose our own subordinate. Those 6 guys are really cunning. They all chose to stay, so of course, I won't be outdone." Nian Bing said, "Is there really a god? What's wrong with the divine realm? Why don't you want to go?" Garamandes said, "Bullshit god, the so-called god is what you humans say. In fact, those gods are also you humans, but they are powerful humans. Before the ancient war, the magic elements on the continent were much denser than they are now. It was at that time that some of you humans were more far-sighted and diligent in cultivation. Finally, they were able to reach an extremely high level, completely surpassing the abilities of humans. They were the gods you speak of. These guys who called themselves gods, relying on their powerful magic power, opened up a new place on another continent and used powerful magic to seal that continent. This is the divine realm I'm talking about. So, the divine realm, the demon realm, and so on all exist together. Of course, it's impossible for you humans to find the divine realm. Even if your navigation technology is more advanced, because the divine realm is protected by a magical barrier, you can't even find it. However, those people who call themselves gods are very conceited, and jointly signed a treaty that does not affect humans. Although humans can't easily go to the divine realm, the so-called gods there can't return to the continent of your human world. Otherwise, once they are discovered, they will be attacked by all the other gods. We, the Dragon Kings, are the highest beings in your human world. If we were to go to that so-called land of gods, we would only be above the ordinary giant dragons and obey the orders of those gods. I have no interest in being controlled by others. Naturally, it would be best to stay in the human world." Nian Bing heard the origin of gods for the first time. She thought for a while and said, "Then, it's possible for humans to cultivate and become gods? If I work hard to cultivate to the level of gods, can I enter the so-called divine realm?" Garamandes nodded and said, "That's natural. However, now is not the same as before. Wanting to cultivate to the level of gods is not an easy matter. You humans have a limited lifespan. In the last 10,000 years, I haven't seen the divine realm's emissary come here to pull someone to the divine realm. However, now there seems to be a magician close to the level of gods. Perhaps she has a chance." Nian Bing's whole body shook and said, Are you talking about the Ice God Tower's Ice God Priest? Garamandes shot a glance at Nienbing and said, It's that little human girl. I really don't know how she cultivated. She is an extremely devout believer of gods. Bitterly cultivating for more than 100 years is really difficult for her. She has always maintained her virgin body and cultivated since young, giving her an advantage that ordinary humans don't have. That's why she can reach the level of God Descent Master. However, she still has several checkpoints before she can become a real god. The last time I met that guy Ice Dragon, we were still talking about her. Now, even if it's us, I'm afraid we can't really hurt her. That little girl's magic is really powerful. What? Even you can't deal with the Ice God Priest? Nian Bing's whole body shook violently, as if she was drenched in ice water. Her whole body felt cold. She had already experienced the strength of the dragon, but she didn't expect that even the proud Garamandes would admit that he couldn't kill the Ice God Priest. Such a powerful enemy, how could she deal with it? Garamandes said, What, do you have a grudge with that little girl? If you do, I advise you to quickly forget about it. That girl already has the body of a so-called demigod, only one step away from the realm of gods. In less than 10 years, she will certainly be able to enter the realm of gods. There will be a messenger from the realm of gods to take her away. According to that guy Ice Dragon, this girl already knew about the existence of the realm of gods when she was still very young. She has been painstakingly cultivating ice magic in order to go to the realm of God. More than 100 years of hard work is for this goal. Do you think you can surpass her? Nian Bing's heart kept flashing with all kinds of thoughts. No, even the most powerful person has a flaw. As long as I am willing to work hard, anything can happen. Garamandes let out a strange laugh and said, Of course it could happen. That little girl is also not without a flaw. Take you as an example, if you can take her virginity, then her ice attribute energy will be broken, and she will never be able to enter the realm of gods. Nian Bing was stunned. Do magicians need to be a virgin to cultivate to the limit? How come I haven't heard of it? Garamandes snorted. That's because you are ignorant and inexperienced. What do you magicians know now? The little bit of magic you know is very common. If magicians want to cultivate to the limit, of course they don't need to be a virgin. As long as they are willing to work hard, with the current level of magic in the continent, you should be able to reach the realm of gods after cultivating for about 300 or 400 years. However, you have to be able to live that long. As for the girl you mentioned who practiced ice magic, she took a shortcut. That is, she cultivated as a virgin. In addition, she was willing to work hard and had many supplementary magic items. That was why she was able to reach her current level in just over 100 years. Boy, if you have any enmity with her, as long as you break her virginity and let her dream of entering the realm of gods fail, then you can get your revenge. If you have enmity, you don't have to kill people. If you want to take revenge, you have to make the other party suffer the most. How about it? If you have the chance, you can go and rape her. I support you, I will go with you and watch the show. How about it? Nian Bing's face changed. Although Garamandes's appearance now looked very obscene, his words did not seem to be false. Come on, I have no interest in that old witch. Besides, are you willing to let me go? Garamandes laughed and said, Of course I can't let you go. In fact, even if you want to rape her, it will be very difficult to succeed. Unless you have a higher strength than her. But that is impossible, at least it will be impossible in 100 years. Nian Bing boy, to be honest, although that little girl is a little old, but her body function is maintained very well because she has been cultivating ice magic for many years. She is no different from a young girl. Unfortunately, you can't do it. Otherwise, raping her is indeed a good choice. Not only can you enjoy yourself, but you can also take your revenge. What a wonderful thing! Nian Bing looked at him dumbstruck and said, I am really doubting whether you are a dragon or not. Are all dragons like you? Garamandes snorted and said, In this world, if you want to survive better, you have to know how to be flexible and put your own interests first. It is precisely because I understand this that I can become the successor of the next dragon god. Boy, don't tell me that you want to take your revenge in an open and aboveboard way. Of course not. As long as I can take my revenge, I can do anything. Nian Bing's eyes flashed with a faint cold light. She clenched her fists. Garamandes leisurely said, "It seems that you and that little girl really have a grudge. However, if you want to take your revenge, you have to hurry up. After 10 years, she will go to the God realm. At that time, what chance do you have?" Nian Bing smiled bitterly and said, "Can I still take my revenge in this state? Are you willing to let me go?" Garamandes smiled. Said, "I only said that I won't let you go, but I didn't say that you can't go out. Didn't you just say that there are a lot of delicious things outside? We can go out and take a look. You are familiar with humans. As long as you can take me to eat delicious food, it doesn't have to be here. Do you think I want to stay here and sleep all day? It is not because Dragon God made me cultivate the Dragon God's supreme curse that I have to stay here. Now that my curse has been completed, I can finally go out and play. Only a ghost would want to stay." Hearing this, Nian Bing couldn't help but be moved. "Are you saying that you want to take me out of here to taste delicious food all over the continent?" Garamandes shook his hand. Said, "No, no, no, don't get it wrong. It is not that I want to take you away, it is you who wants to take me away to taste delicious food. Of course, you have to listen to me." Nian Bing smiled. She didn't expect that before she found a way to leave here, Garamandes would propose to leave and eat delicious food all over the place. Wouldn't that mean that she could go wherever she wanted to go? Although her freedom was limited to a certain extent, from another point of view, with Garamandes following her, it was unintentional that she had an invincible bodyguard by her side. "Oh great Garamandes, I have something to discuss with you." Nian Bing had already made her wishful thinking. Garamandes snorted and said, "Discuss what? I thought you forgot how to call me." Nian Bing smiled and said, "How could I forget? It is my honor to be able to cook for you. However, you also know that as your chef, if my magic is too weak, wouldn't it be embarrassing for you? When I came here, I saw that you had a lot of magic books here. If I can learn something from them, maybe I can think of a better way to cook. You see, shouldn't you?" Garamandes stared at her. "Good. You actually dare to think of my baby, stop dreaming. Those magic books are written in ancient words. Even if I give them to you, you won't be able to understand them." Nian Bing said with some disappointment, "I really can't understand them at all? That's such a pity. It seems that if I encounter danger, only you can protect me. Unfortunately, you can't directly attack humans and my magic is too weak." Garamandes tilted his head and looked at Nian Bing. "Kid, you don't have to have any ideas about me. Seeing that the food you cook is really delicious, I will naturally teach you some magic tricks when I am happy. However, you have to satisfy my stomach. If I get tired of eating your food, maybe I will directly twist your head off." Nian Bing was overjoyed. If she could get some magic advice from a powerful existence like Garamandes, it would naturally be of great help to her ice and fire magic. She hurriedly said, "You can rest assured, as one of the top chefs in Yangon, the food I cook will definitely satisfy you. Then can you teach me the knowledge of mimicry first? You also know that I have 2 kinds of magic, but now I can't control them very well. This restricts my development in magic, and it will be very difficult to promote to a higher level. I am sleepy, let's talk about it later. You first restore your magic power and eat all the ingredient. We will leave here and find something good to eat outside." As soon as her voice fell, Garamandes already let out a loud snore. Although she was in human form, her dragon's snore was enough to shake the whole cave. Sleeping after eating, isn't this a pig? Nian Bing cursed in her heart, helplessly shaking her head. She walked to the side and sat down. She didn't immediately start meditating, but instead thought about Garamandes' words. If according to what he said, the ice goddess priestess had cultivated for more than 100 years to reach her current level, that was simply too frightening. Could it be that the gap between an archmage and a god's descent master was so big? She remembered that when she was little, her father once said that her mother was locked up by the ice goddess priestess as punishment because she secretly had him with her father. Perhaps the ice goddess priestess wanted her mother to inherit her position, so she chose to cultivate with her virginity. Garamandes said that if she could break the ice goddess priestess's virginity, that would be the best revenge. Forget it, although she wasn't some upright gentleman, she wasn't interested in a 100-years-old witch. She was old enough to be her great-grandmother. Ice goddess priestess, just you wait. Even if my strength can't catch up to yours, I'll definitely think of a way to make you look good. Closing her eyes, Nian Bing stabilized her mind and began to meditate. She held the sigh of the ice goddess and the roar of the fire god in her hands. She absorbed the magical elements in the air. Actually, even she didn't know that in terms of magic cultivation speed, she was much faster than ordinary magicians. This was not only related to her being a dual-element magician and being able to absorb two kinds of magic at the same time, but more importantly, that was the sigh of the ice goddess and the roar of the fire god. Although the effects of the two top-notch parangons couldn't be seen normally, it seemed that they could only make the power of magic a little stronger when using magic, and also save a little more magic power. In the process of cultivation, the two parangons possessed a special energy that had always been imperceptibly changing Nian Bing's physique, and making her magic power purer. Simply from this point, it could be seen that although Lizzie was a sorcerer, in terms of continuous fighting ability and the power of magic use, he definitely couldn't compare to Nian Bing in magic of the same rank. Although his magic power was great in terms of purity, it couldn't compare to Nian Bing's magic. What Nian Bing was going through now was a foundational process. As long as the foundation was solid enough, she could possibly become a powerful magician in the future. This point, the fire god dragon Garamandes naturally saw it. However, in his eyes, Nian Bing was so insignificant that he naturally wouldn't remind him. 3 days passed. As for cleaning up the food, Garamandes was absolutely first class. After turning into a human body, his eating speed had decreased a lot, but he could eat non-stop. In addition to sleeping, he ate. Nian Bing's cooking speed was just enough for him to eat. For 3 days the two repeated the same thing. Garamandes ate, slept, and ate while Nian Bing cooked and meditated. Fortunately, Garamandes was kind and didn't forget to leave some for Nian Bing when eating. As he continued to eat, the food materials left by Carlo and the others were finally used up. Lying contentedly on his jewelry, Garamandes sighed and said, "It's really wonderful. To think that I, the great Garamandes, have lived for tens of thousands of years, but these few days are the best for me. Nian Bing, you're really not boasting. The taste of the dishes you cook is different. Now I'm more and more yearning for the outside world." Nian Bing said unhappily, "You're eating happily, but I'm dying of exhaustion. If you eat like this every day, it won't be long before I die." Garamandes laughed and said, "That won't happen. How can I bear to let you die of exhaustion? Oh, right, haven't you realized that although your body is tired these few days, your spirit is much better? Your magic progress has also increased a lot?" Nian Bing snorted angrily and said, "That's the result of my own hard work, plus the fire element here is abundant. Cooking for you every day, my spirit is always in a tired state. Don't talk about progress, I'm almost dead from exhaustion." Garamandes patted Nian Bing's shoulder and said, Okay, don't complain. Anyway, you'll be out of the sea of suffering soon. I don't have to eat good food every day. For me, eating is just a kind of enjoyment. Your days of suffering are over. Anyway, there are no more materials. Let's go today. I'll teach you some magic insights as a reward for you. How about it?" Nian Bing's eyes lit up and said, "You're willing to teach me? Don't tell me it's some rubbish insight. Don't forget, I'm a human and you're a dragon. Our body structure is different, so our innate ability to sense magic is also different. Will your insights be effective on me? Garamandes snorted and said, What do you know? Although I'm a dragon, I've already lived for tens of thousands of years. I can't be more familiar with your human body structure. My experience in magic alone is something you can never compare to. Stop talking nonsense, pack up your good things, we're ready to go. Saying that, he pointed to the kitchen utensils on the ground. Finally, they could leave this place. Nian Bing couldn't help but be overjoyed, but she didn't show it on her face. After cleaning up the kitchen utensils, she put them one by one into her spatial ring. Garamandes looked at his treasures and muttered to himself, Nian Bing, I suddenly discovered a problem. Those 3 knives of yours represent fire, ice, and water magic. Among them, ice is evolved from water. Did you notice that when you use these 3 knives to cut food, even if you don't use magic, the same dish will taste different? Nian Bing packed up her things while bluntly saying, Nonsense, I don't need you to tell me that. Because my 3 knives are inlaid with top-quality gems that contain a kind of magic element. When I cut the food, the magic element will naturally be brought into the food. When I eat it, the taste will naturally be different. This is also the advantage of using magic on food. Even if an ordinary chef's skills are exquisite, it's impossible to make a dish with magic aura. It's precisely because of this reason that my teacher lost to an ordinary barbecue. Garamandes laughed and said, Since it's like this, if you have knives of different attributes, wouldn't you be able to make more different tastes? Nian Bing's eyes lit up, but she quickly regained her calm. You say it so easily. Ordinary magic knives are useless. Only top-quality magic knives like mine can fully integrate magic elements into the food. Don't tell me you have a top-quality knife? I don't believe you. What's more, my magic can only use the 2 forms of ice and fire. I don't know how to mimic your magic. When I cook, only ice and fire elements can fully display their power. Other magic won't work. Garamandes looked at Nian Bing, laughed and said, Kid, you don't need to be pretentious. I know you want to learn my magic mimicry and have designs on my treasures. Nian Bing's expression didn't change as she said, Do I? You were the one who brought it up first. What does it have to do with me? Didn't you say you want to leave here? I've already packed up my things. Garamandes leaned on his treasures and leisurely lay down, saying, Nian Bing, it's not impossible for you to learn magic mimicry from me. If it's you humans, ordinary magicians might not be able to do it, but you're different. Ice and fire magic are completely opposite. If you can truly cultivate the same origin of ice and fire, using this as a foundation, you won't lose out to us dragons. Chapter 67. Nian Bing's heart skipped a beat as she said, You mean to say that using the same source of ice and fire as a foundation, I can mimic the other types of magic, right? Garamandes laughed and said, Theoretically, it is completely possible. As for whether it will really succeed, it will depend on how far you can cultivate the same source of ice and fire magic. This is not urgent, you can slowly cultivate it. The same source of ice and fire is not so easy to control, even I don't really understand the principle of this kind of magic. However, I will give you a suggestion, you have to study it more from the details. For example, although a magic element is very small, but a sparrow may be small, but it has all the essentials. If you can study a magic element thoroughly, then you will be able to see a lot of things from this single magic element. All magic elements have something in common, even the polar opposites of ice and fire, light and darkness are no exception. What is the common point of ice and fire? As long as you understand this point, everything in the future will be easier to achieve. Think of 2 opposing elements, under certain circumstances, can be transformed into each other. Consider this my first lesson to you. I also know that this is more profound, for a magic beginner like you to understand, but you don't have to be discouraged, take it slowly. Of course, you don't have to be grateful to me, Even if you learn how to mimic magic, you still have a long way to go to catch up to my level. I am not teaching you this out of kindness. The more magic you grasp, the more dishes you can make to satisfy me. We are only using each other. Although Nian Bing did not have a good impression of Garamandes, she still recognized his understanding of magic. She completely remembered Garamandes's words in her mind, although she could not completely understand it, but she understood. This was the most useful thing for her after sales training. Who will thank you? You said it yourself, we are only using each other. Anyway, you don't like me, at most you can kill me. With your ability, you will definitely kill a small person like me in a second. However, there are not many people in the continent who can use magic in the kitchen. Stinking brat, you dare to threaten the great Garamandes? Do you really want to die? Garamandes suddenly sat up, his eyes blazing. She looked at Nian Bing angrily. Nian Bing smiled. He said, "All right. Stop pretending. You've lived for tens of thousands of years. If you really get angry because of a few words from me, you're not the great Garamandes." Garamandes was stunned for a moment, then laughed and said, "Kid, are you flattering me?" However, it did sound quite comfortable. "How about this? I can't use you for nothing. What you said earlier makes sense. If he could find other magic knives of similar quality, it will greatly improve your magic and cooking skills. Yes. I won't use you for nothing. Let me borrow something from you first." As he said that, he reached into his pile of treasures. With a shake of his wrist, a golden light fell into his palm. It was a knife. It looked like an ordinary knife, no different from the knives used by ordinary knights. The blade was wide, the back was thick, and the blade was about 4 feet long. The blade was as wide as a palm, and the thickest part of the back was close to an inch. This kind of thick-backed machete was undoubtedly the best for chopping the ground. The ordinary shape of the machete was not ordinary because of the golden luster it emitted. However, there were no decorations on this knife. Everything was so natural, there was not even a trace of a pattern. The hilt was shiny, there was no light fingerprints on it like the proud heaven blade. The soft golden light emitted from the blade made this originally lethal weapon emit a gentle aura. Garamandes stretched out his hand and flicked the blade. The blade immediately let out a pleasant sound. The golden light on the blade swayed, showing signs of breaking through the air. It seemed to be so gentle because of Garamandes's suppression. Glancing at Nian Bing, Garamandes asked, "What do you think of this blade?" Nian Bing nodded, exclaiming in admiration, "It's indeed a good blade. It's a special weapon for knights. If my guess is correct, the weight of this blade is extraordinary. The most precious thing about it is the light magic aura it carries. Generally, weapons like blades can hardly be classified as light magic items, because the light element is the purest and most sacred element of magic. It's incompatible with the killing intent of weapons. This blade can be recognized by the light element and become a light magic blade. If my guess is correct, it wasn't originally a weapon for killing, but a sacrificial blade for light sacrifice?" Garamandes laughed heartily. "Well said. To have such an understanding, it's already very good for a weak human like you. Unfortunately, you're not right at all. Although this blade is surrounded by an enormous amount of light element and is brimming with a sacred aura, it's still a war blade for killing, and not a sacrificial blade. Under this blade, tens of thousands of people have lost their lives. However, it's still a holy blade, and not a magic blade. The reason why it can carry the sacred aura of light element is not because of a light mage, but because the holy blade resonates with the heavens, and the light element automatically converges to form it. This blade is one of the most precious items in my collection. It has several pure heavens, and the most common one is the light of dawn. Tens of thousands of years ago, it was the light of dawn for all the poor and those who were forced to harm others. When the light of dawn arrives, all suffering will end. This holy blade's name is Dawn. It appeared in your human world for a total of 73 years. In these 73 years, The holy blade dawn has been the nightmare of all the nobles and villains, the light of dawn for all the persecuted. Under this blade, tens of thousands of villains lost their lives. Even the murderous demon King Heroic Spirit didn't kill as many as it did. This blade doesn't only kill humans, but also other races. Even among us dragons, there was once a variant three-headed evil dragon that died under this blade. However, although this dawn blade took countless lives, it only killed the most evil and wicked people. The villains cursed it, but there were tens of thousands of commoners and oppressed races who praised it. When the dawn blade killed other creatures, it only needed a flash of light, and the blade never came in contact with the enemy. Just that irresistible white light alone was enough to be a nightmare for the enemy. Later on, when the dawn blade swept across the continent for 60 years, this white light changed, turning into a golden color. It wasn't the god's battle aura that you humans speak of, but the blade itself was baptized by the light element, turning into a holy radiant blade. Including me, no one knows what material this blade is made of. However, after 10,000 years, it didn't have the slightest trace of rust. The holy light element is forever protecting it, protecting this dawn blade that once pierced through the heavens and earth. Nian Bing sighed softly and said, "There's no record of what happened 10,000 years ago in the history of the continent. However, after hearing what you said and looking at this blade, I can imagine the heroic bearing of that senior. He was born for justice. In this aspect, I will never be able to match him. My pursuit is only revenge and the peak of my culinary skills. Garamandes, can you tell me his story in detail? I am very curious about this senior who swept across the continent for 73 years and gave everything to justice. Can a person really be so righteous? Could it be that he didn't do a single dark thing? I really find it hard to believe that he could influence the entire continent with his strength alone." Garamandes snorted and said, "Idiot, when did I say he was alone? Whether he did evil or not can be seen from this blade. To be directly recognized by the light element, it already proves everything. Can you make the light element recognize you? Only a magnanimous heart. Only a saint who has a bright heart and is willing to give everything to help others can do that. There are very few humans I admire. However, I can't help but admire this person. In this Yangon continent there were a few god-tier masters. They were so strong that they were close to the power of the gods. However, the only one who truly went to the god realm was the owner of this dawn blade. As far as I know, he is the only sacred teacher in the entire continent. The sacred teacher who was worshipped by all races at that time. He was also one of the few times that the Yangon continent was unified. He was the one who unified for the longest time and was the most loved by the people. At that time, the Yangon continent was completely free and democratic. The unity of humanity was at an all-time high. What a pity, what a pity! At this point, the humanoid Garamandes revealed a sad expression in his eyes. He gently shook his head and gazed at the dawn blade with blurred eyes. Nian Bing's heart moved and said, "What's a pity? Could it be that something happened later? Didn't you say that this sacred teacher went to the god realm? What's a pity about such a perfect ending?" Garamandes stroked dawn blade and said, "Although the sacred teacher is admirable, he did not have good descendants. His descendants were not as good as the previous generation, and the perfect country was ruined just like that. In the end, it almost caused the extinction of humanity. The sacred teacher was forced to take the risk of being punished by the god realm and return to the Yangon continent. He used his endless life as the price to move the god race and completely seal the enemy. He was sealed in the 7 sealing bottles of Mordos and handed over to us 7 Dragon King for safekeeping. Peace was restored to the continent. Although the scene of prosperity was no longer there, at least humanity was no longer in danger of extinction. His fearless spirit of self-sacrifice is what I admire the most. I didn't expect that after 10,000 years, someone would finally come to plot against the sealing bottles of Mordos. Nian Bing's body trembled slightly and said, "Since the sealing bottles of Mordas are so important, then you should quickly find it." "Find? Of course I have to find. However, it's useless to be anxious. That day, that despicable guy used a teleportation scroll to who knows where. Even if I want to find it, it's not something that can be found in a short time. What's more, it's almost impossible to get all 7 sealing bottles, so I'm not in a hurry. After we leave here, we can slowly look for it while eating your human delicacies." Nian Bing looked at Garamandes with a wry smile and said, "Your idea is really strange. Choosing you to keep this sealing bottle is definitely the mistake of those gods. Can you tell me what is sealed in those bottles? What kind of enemy almost destroyed the whole human race? The dynasty built by the sacred teacher was so powerful, could it be that there was an invasion of other races?" Garamandes snorted and said, "I said, it's better for you to know less about these things. If you know too much, you will only lose your life. I have no obligation to protect you. However, what I can tell you is that the only thing that can destroy human beings is human beings themselves. It has nothing to do with any other races. It's just like how the biggest obstacle to a warrior's cultivation is his own inner demon. If you humans don't get anxious, no one can help you. Okay. This dawn knife will be yours in the future. It will be your 4th kitchen knife. The pure light element on dawn knife will taste very good when used to cook." What? You want to give me dawn knife to cook? Although Nian Bing longed for a light attribute kitchen knife, dawn knife's origin was so mysterious. Moreover, it was the only thing left behind by the sacred teacher in the human world. Using it as a kitchen knife was really a bit strange. Of course, this was not the main reason. This dawn knife was longer than Feng Nu's parting heaven sword. Moreover, it was wide and thick. How could such a big knife be used as a kitchen knife? Whether he could even carry it was a problem. Therefore, he asked Garamandes so doubtfully. Garamandes gently waved dawn knife in his hand and said, "No matter how strong dawn knife's origin is, it still needs to be in the hands of the sacred teacher. It is the real dawn knife. Rather than leaving it in my pile of treasures, it is better to give it to you as a kitchen knife. Using it as a kitchen knife is not a bad thing. There is no problem. However, this knife is not light. If you want to master it, you will need to put in a lot of effort. Give me that light gem of yours. The holy blade has existed for more than 10,000 years. It is time to upgrade it. After all, without the control of the sacred teacher, it has already robbed its own soul." Dawn knife and holy light stone, wasn't this too powerful? Nian Bing stared at Garamandes with wide eyes. Garamandes said somewhat impatiently, "Hurry up. If you want to leave this place quickly, give me the stone quickly. I know what you are worried about. In fact, don't you know that the gems on the 3 knives you already have were left behind by those gods in the human world? Without your light attribute gem, how can dawn knife compare to your knives? As long as you add the gem, if you can gain the ability to transform in the future, dawn knife will be the same as your 3 magic knives. It will become a top-grade magic staff, a light attribute magic staff. Kid, you just have to cook properly for me. There are many benefits. As long as you satisfy my stomach, everything else can be discussed. Who knows, if you work hard for 100 or 80 years, you might even have the hope of becoming another sacred teacher." Nian Bing smiled bitterly. "Don't try to coax me. I don't want to become a sacred teacher. I don't have such a good temperament, and I don't have such big aspirations. Can I not cook for you? I don't want to die." As he said that, he took out the holy light stone from his spatial ring and handed it over. After receiving the holy light stone, Garamandes's eyes revealed an intoxicated light. He looked up at the sky and said, "Nian Bing, don't forget, I am the great Garamandes. What does the great Garamandes not know? You're a chef, and your mood will have a great impact on your cooking. It's not that I haven't eaten human food before. If it weren't for the fact that your food is incomparable, do you think I would waste so much effort on you? Playing tricks with the great Garamandes won't do you any good. Nian Bing was shocked. Just as she was about to say something, she felt her body tremble. Her body was wrapped in a scorching stream of air and sent to the edge of the cave. In the next moment, Garamandes held the blade in one hand and the holy light stone in the other. He began to chant in a low voice. The strange intonation was like a low buzzing sound that constantly drifted outward. It wasn't loud, but it caused the entire cave to tremble slightly. Garamandes's hands turned into the color of red jade as he chanted the incantation. His translucent hands continuously poured red air into the holy light stone and the dawn holy blade. Back then, Feng Nu had to rely on the furnace left behind by Hua Tian to fuse the righteous Yang blade and the divine stone of fire with a large amount of battle qi. However, everything was so easy for Garamandes. When the dawn holy blade and the holy light stone turned into the same color as his hands, the blade and the gem naturally fused together. The slender and strong hilt of the blade embedded with the holy light stone didn't look out of place at all. It was as if it was supposed to be there. Just as Nian Bing was sighing at Garamandes's strength, Garamandes suddenly screamed and threw the dawn holy blade. The blade turned into a streak of red light and arrived in front of Nian Bing in the blink of an eye. Before she could react, the activation magic scrolls on her body brought out beautiful colors one after another. A total of 4 protective scrolls were activated at almost the same time. However, their activation couldn't block the red jade-like light. That was the power of penetration. The magic scrolls couldn't block the penetration. Nian Bing didn't even change his position because of the magic scroll. A strong burning sensation spread throughout his body as the blade pierced through his chest. Nian Bing could clearly hear the sound of his sternum breaking, and the smell of burnt flesh was so unpleasant. At the same time, his life force was rapidly draining away, even though he was stabbed in the right side of his chest. However, the dawn holy blade was too heavy. Under Garamandes's strength, Nian Bing's body was lifted up like a piece of straw and nailed to the cave wall with the blade. Suddenly suffering such a heavy injury, Nian Bing didn't feel any pain. Because of the burning heat of the blade, the wound instantly froze and didn't even bleed. Her mind was in chaos. Why did he want to kill me? Am I going to die just like that? Everything is going to end like this. Just when I had the hope of leaving this place, my life was taken away. With a flash of red light, Garamandes appeared in front of Nian Bing. He smiled strangely and kept chanting. One of his hands was already holding the hilt of the dawn holy stone. The peaceful sound of the magic spell was like a wave of water that wrapped around Nian Bing's body. Suddenly, she felt her whole body tremble. The dawn holy blade that was constantly draining her life force was emitting a warm current. The wound that had just turned from numbness to severe pain became comfortable under the effect of this warm current. The pain quickly disappeared and the light flickered. Her life force stopped draining and was recovering bit by bit. Garamandes suddenly shouted in a low voice. The dawn holy blade was instantly pulled out from Nian Bing's chest. Under the cover of the golden light, no blood spurted out. His expression suddenly turned solemn. His left palm and his right saber were continuously chanting strange incantations, releasing golden and blue light respectively. The light and water elements were treating Nian Bing's injuries at the same time. Light and water had their own unique characteristics when it came to healing. Now that they had merged together, they fully displayed their powerful healing abilities. Nian Bing's injuries were miraculously healed without leaving a trace. Even the circulation of his blood and magic vortex in his body weren't affected at all. When the magic left her body and she slowly slid to the ground, she couldn't help but feel like she was reborn. From life to death, and then from death to life. This feeling greatly stimulated Nian Bing's nerve. Struggling to stand up from the ground and move her body, Nian Bing said in shock and anger, "Garamandes, are you crazy? Although my life is in your hands, if you play with me like this, you might as well kill me." She didn't try to fight Garamandes with her life, because she knew that it would be futile. She coldly looked at Garamandes, her eyes full of coldness.
Garamandes snorted and said, "What's so fun about you? Do I need to play with you?"
Idiot, do you think that this Dawn Holy Blade can be used by anyone? Just now, when I forcibly fused your gem with it, I received a strong backlash from the Dawn Holy Blade itself. Fortunately, this gem is the purest light element gem, so the fusion was successful. But after the fusion, I need some spiritual aura to baptize it. The original owner of Dawn is a human, and I am a dragon, so of course I need your blood. You brat actually used a magic scroll to trigger it, almost spoiling my great plan. Fortunately, I used enough power. Now, your bloodline has been recognized by Dawn. In the future, this blade is yours. As for whether or not it can still release its ancient splendor, that will depend on you. Seeing Garamandes hand over the Dawn Holy Blade to her, Nian Bing received the hilt, half believing and half doubting. When Garamandes let go, Nian Bing felt her whole body sink. Because her mind was still thinking about the previous process of the long blade piercing her chest, her whole body fell forward along with the blade. With a puff sound, half of the blade was inserted into the ground, stabilizing her body. Garamandes took joy in her misfortune. Brat, wanting Dawn to be your kitchen knife is not an easy matter. Slowly enjoy yourself. Don't worry, there won't be any sequelae on your body. With my light and water magic of the 9th step, unless your head explodes, you won't die even if you want to. Looking at Nian Bing evilly, he already thought of a way to deal with Nian Bing. Nian Bing looked at the long blade in front of him. Although he wasn't concentrating just now, his arms were much stronger than normal people due to his years of training with the blade. Even so, he wasn't able to hold the Dawn Blade. It was obvious that the Dawn Blade was much heavier than it looked. Holding the hilt with both hands, he used all his strength to pull Dawn up, barely holding it in front of him. Nian Bing was surprised to find that Dawn's weight was more than 50 kilograms. Even with both hands, it was impossible for him to wield this heavy holy blade. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. Great Garamandes, if you want to harm me, just say it directly.
You don't have to beat around the bush like this, right?
This blade is equivalent to trash in my hands. It's completely useless. The golden light of the blade was completely restrained. It didn't look as shiny as before, but Nian Bing faintly felt that this holy blade seemed to have already broken away from the feeling of metal, as if it was composed of light elements. That pure feeling, coupled with the enormous holy aura, calmed his previously frightened mind. The heavenly flower tablet on his chest was emitting a more auspicious aura, which complemented the Dawn Holy Blade, making him feel exceptionally comfortable. The warmth brought by the light swept away the negative emotions in his heart. Everything returned to nature, and Nian Bing's expression also became much more peaceful. Garamandes unhappily said, "You actually called such a treasured blade trash.
You really don't know what's good for you."
Let me tell you, this blade weighs 128 kilograms, which is several times more than an ordinary heavy sword that weighs 64 kilograms. It's classified as a heavy weapon. Moreover, with that gem of yours, this blade's light element aura is extremely rich. If you encounter any dark creatures or enemies like that bastard who stole Murda's sealing bottle that day, with the protection of this Dawn Holy Blade, the negative aura of darkness won't be able to harm your body. Such a good thing is priceless, yet you still don't want it. Nian Bing smiled bitterly. I also know that it's a good thing, but don't forget I'm a magician, not a warrior. Even if I'm a warrior, I'm afraid that there aren't many people who can use this heavy blade that weighs 128 kilograms, right? How could it be comfortable to carry this thing on his body? Although he was extremely unworthy of the holy brilliant stone, his rational self knew that this blade wouldn't be of much use to him. Garamandes gave a mischievous smile. I'm doing this for your own good. You human magicians often put the cultivation of magic power and spiritual force at the forefront, but you don't know that you've already walked into a misconception. Everything has its limits, and so does the human body. Purely cultivating magic power and spiritual force will inevitably reduce the training of a magician's body to the lowest level. You're better off. As a chef, you can still move around, but ordinary magicians' bodies are much weaker than yours. That's because they simply don't understand that the body is the source of everything. When magic power and spiritual force reach a certain level, it will become an enormous burden on the body. This kind of burden will restrict your magic development. To give a simple example, you human magicians won't easily use forbidden spells, that is, spells of the 11th step. They clearly have that kind of strength, so why don't they dare to use it casually? If you ask them, they'll definitely tell you that it's because they're afraid of magic backlash. That's all bullshit. The magic they use is their own ability to communicate with the magic elements of heaven and earth. Apart from the sacrificial magic of dark magic, which sacrifices something of themselves for others to use, ordinary magic doesn't have any backlash at all. The backlash that those magicians speak of is only the resonance between the forbidden spell and the magic elements of heaven and earth. Resonance with the magic elements? Nian Bing looked at Garamandes in astonishment. Ever since she met this great Garamandes, Nian Bing discovered that she was constantly coming into contact with new areas of magic. Garamandes gave a mischievous smile. That's right, it's precisely resonance with magic. At that time, the magic elements will produce a very strong resonance. After all, it's a spell of the 11th step. The resonance has already reached a certain level, and the magicians are all old magicians who have cultivated for many years. With their old bodies, how can they withstand the resonance? It's undoubtedly suicidal, so they don't dare to use it. Think about it the other way around. If your body is healthy, the damage caused by the resonance when using magic will be much less. It can even be said that there won't be any harm at all. That way, not only can you use higher-level magic, but at the same time, it'll also make it easier to break through the bottleneck of magic cultivation. Didn't you want to learn more about magic from me? What I'm teaching you today is my own experience. So, as long as you use this Dawn Blade to train your body, then your magic future will be limitless. You can create a magic scroll that can trigger magic. It looks like you still have a future. Nian Bing thought about it carefully. Even though Garamandes' words made sense, he could not help but feel uneasy when he saw the flickering look in Garamandes' eyes. He glanced at the dawn saber in his hand. He was reluctant to return it to Garamandes. After all, it was a magic saber that was on par with the morning dew, pure sun, and proud sky. At that moment, he nodded and said, "Since this saber is already mine, I want to change its name. I don't want to be a saint. This heavy saber will be named after my gemstone. It will be called the Holy Radiant Saber. In memory of that senior, I'll call it the dawn that runs through heaven and earth." Garamandes, with his hands behind his back, nodded in satisfaction and said, "The dawn that runs through heaven and earth. Holy Glory Blade, not bad, it's a good name. Let's do as you said. Okay, we should also set off. Nian Bing, I'll help you train your body. I'll help you keep your ring, you can carry the Holy Glory Blade, and walk out of the mountain range. I think, after leaving the Tian Ding mountain range, your body will definitely reach a new level. You've cooked for me for a few days, don't worry, I'll provide you with food along the way. Let's go." His figure flashed. Without waiting for Nian Bing to understand, the space ring on his hand had already disappeared. Then, Nian Bing only felt her body flew up high, as if riding on the clouds, carrying the Holy Glory Blade directly towards the top of the cave. Chapter 68. Garamandes smiled sinisterly, muttering to himself, "Nian Bing boy, don't you get tired easily from cooking? This time I'll help you train your body, so that you won't be lazy and not cook for me in the future. Magicians train their body, and, not a bad choice, but what I said is also the truth, I'm not lying to you. Waha, the great Garamandes is really smart. My delicacies. I'm coming." Casually waving his hand in the pile of treasures, a shadow flashed, just when Nian Bing was about 100 feet in the air. He felt his body tighten. His body was already above Garamandes's head, and before he could figure out what happened, the two of them had already appeared outside the cave. Immediately, the leisurely air rushed to his face. Nian Bing supported himself with a knife. His eyes suddenly opened up. He finally didn't have to suffer the sin of being a frog in a well in the cave. Garamandes played with the spatial ring in his hand, laughed mischievously, and said, "We can go now. Don't worry, these few days you only need to rush with all your strength. There's no need for you to cook for me." Nian Bing looked at the boundless mountains, smiled bitterly and said, "Do you really want me to carry a knife and walk alone? Great Garamandes, are you sure this method is beneficial for magic cultivation?" Garamandes put on a serious look. Of course, the great Garamandes will not lie. Nian Bing hesitated for a moment and said, "Then according to what you said, aren't warriors more suited to cultivate magic? However, magic warriors are very rare among humans." Garamandes snorted and said, "What do you know, warriors cultivate do-chi. Although do-chi and magic have some similarities, their cultivation methods and displayed results are after all different. One is internal cultivation, the other is external. If you cultivate do-chi, your body's perception of the magic elements in the air will greatly change. Even if you cultivate do-chi, there won't be any good result. Of course, powerful existences like us dragons are absolute exceptions. You humans can't reach that level. So, I only said to let you train your body, I didn't say to let you cultivate martial arts." Looking at the heavy holy brilliance knife in his hand, Nian Bing's face was bitter. Carrying this over the mountains and ridges, it was not an easy task. Garamans kept a straight face. His right hand lightly waved towards a large tree at the top of the mountain. Immediately, a tough branch broke off. His right hand grabbed the air, and the branch fell into his palm. The branch shook and crackled in the air. "Kid, it's not that easy to learn magic from me. I'll teach you well, don't even think about it. Otherwise, this branch of mine won't be merciful." As he said saying that, his injury. "Don't, great Garamans, I'll go, okay?" The knife, following the direction pointed in the direction pointed, following the path, and followed the direction, pointed, following the path, along the rugged mountain road, following the direction pointed the direction, following the direction pointed. 128 kilograms might not be a big deal, but carrying such a heavy weight on his back was not an ordinary matter. Perhaps the fire dragon human race had been notified by Garamandes and did not appear again. As he continued to move forward, Nian Bing realized that the branch in Garamandes's hand was not simply there to urge him to move forward, but also became his life-saving straw. The mountain road was steep, and Nian Bing lost his footing more than once while carrying the holy brilliance knife, which weighed 128 kilograms. At this time, the soft branch would naturally wrap around his body and pull him back from the edge of danger. Garamandes followed behind him, as if he was on a scenic tour. After being saved a few times, Nian Bing suddenly felt that he did not hate Garamandes so much anymore, and he also believed in what he said previously. Nian Bing's physical strength was greatly overdrawn, and the coarse clothes on his body had already become strips. Nian Bing could no longer care about this now. After leaving the mountain peak for 2 hours, Garamandes finally said to Nian Bing, who was moving forward step by step, "All right, it's been 2 hours, rest for a while." Upon hearing this, Nian Bing's first action was to slide to the ground. The holy brilliance knife fell to the side, but he did not care about it, lying on the ground, gasping for breath. Amidst the crisp sound, Nian Bing, who was lying on the ground, sat up in pain. He said angrily, "Are you going to let me live? Didn't you say to rest for a while?" Garamandes squatted beside Nian Bing, chuckled, and took out a black thing the size of a child's fist and stuffed it into Nian Bing's mouth. Nian Bing only felt a fishy smell assailing his nose, and just as he was about to spit it out, a scorching current came from his body. He subconsciously opened his mouth, and Garamandes patted him. Immediately, the black thing went down his throat, bringing with it a hot air. Nian Bing looked at Garamandes in shock. What did you feed me? His chest and abdomen churned, and waves of nausea came, but under the effect of Garamandes's ability, he could not vomit. Garamandes said leisurely, Of course it's poison. Do you think I can feed you anything good? As he spoke, he removed the energy on Nian Bing's body. That thing had already been digested. Nian Bing pointed his middle finger at Garamandes. Anyway, he knew that Garamandes would not bear to kill him. Poison is poison. Anyway, with you by my side, sooner or later I'll be played to death by you, so it's better to poison me to death. Even if I'm going to die, I want to sleep for a while. With that, he lay on the ground again, and just as he was about to relax, the intense pain came again. Nian Bing turned over and sat up, looking at the branch in Garamandes's hand that had just been retracted, his eyes almost spitting fire. Why did you hit me again? Didn't I eat the poison? Garamandes said slowly, If you want to improve your magic, now is the best time. The more tired your body is, the easier it is to concentrate. Do you still remember what I said earlier? Feel the mysteries of magic from the smallest places. If you dare to lie down again, it won't be just a slap. A sinister smile hung on the corner of his mouth, the branch in his hand constantly crackling in the air. After listening to Garamandes's words, Nian Bing understood that he was giving him pointers. His mind suddenly became clear, as if he was suddenly enlightened. He looked deeply at Garamandes, his hands supporting his tired body as he sat cross-legged, trying to forget the tiredness of his body. Just like what Garamandes had said, Nian Bing focused all his attention on his mana and slowly absorbed the magical elements in the air. At the same time, he used his mental strength to pay attention to these subtle magical elements and feel their mysteries. Just as he was about to enter a meditative state, Nian Bing's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly had an idea. Garamandes lazily looked at Nian Bing from the side, secretly thinking, This kid has some talent, he doesn't look so stupid. Train well, with the same origin of ice and fire as the foundation, maybe after a period of time, he can really grasp the ability to transform. If that's the case, he won't have to worry about not having a variety of dishes to eat. 7 elemental magic, coupled with the cooking methods of various dishes, it will be difficult to eat the same dish. Ha! Thinking of this, Garamandes couldn't help but smile. Looking at Nian Bing, it was as if he was looking at a large pile of delicious food. At this time, sitting cross-legged, Nian Bing's body was surrounded by faint red and blue streams of air. The 2 streams of air were slowly revolving around his body. Although the magic elements were not strong, the pattern of the rotation was exactly the same as the ice and fire in his body. The speed of the rotation was very fast. Garamandes didn't care at first, but suddenly, he found that the speed of the air around Nian Bing's body was becoming slower and slower. Just when he wanted to remind Nian Bing, the 2 types of magic that were rotating suddenly stopped, forming red and blue, 2 dazzling balls of light on both sides of Nian Bing's body. Not good, this kid is crazy. Garamandes flashed in front of Nian Bing, at the same time raised both hands. The red light divided into 2, separately controlling the magic that was stagnating on both sides of Nian Bing's body. He really didn't understand what Nian Bing wanted to do. Why did the magic that was originally rotating so well suddenly stop? In fact, to him, this was completely equivalent to suicide. Through the feeling of the magic in Nian Bing's body, Garamandes clearly discovered that this situation was definitely not caused by going berserk during meditation, but by Nian Bing's own actions. Did he deliberately want to die? No, that's impossible. Garamandes immediately dispelled this thought, and continued to carefully control the 2 opposite types of magic in Nian Bing's body. He didn't believe that Nian Bing would choose to commit suicide. However, at this time, even someone as strong as him had no way to solve the current dilemma. Garamandes knew that as long as he helped Nian Bing's energy leave, the ice and fire in his body would violently collide. At that time, Nian Bing's body would definitely turn into ashes. Not to mention his own light and water-based recovery magic of the 9th step, even a 12th-step super forbidden spell wouldn't be able to rebuild a destroyed body. For the sake of delicacies, he could only control Nian Bing's body. His dragon brain was constantly working, thinking of all kinds of possible method. Time passed by minute, second by second. Garamandes had already been thinking for close to 4 hours. To him, continuously controlling the energy in Nian Bing's body didn't consume much, but he was getting more and more impatient with boredom. After 4 hours he thought of countless possibilities. However, although he was the Fire Dragon King, he didn't know much about the magic of the same origin of ice and fire that appeared in the human body. He thought of trying to restore the rotation of the magic in Nian Bing's body, but he didn't have the slightest certainty about what would happen when the two opposite types of magic came into contact. Garamandes really couldn't bear to let Nian Bing die like this. Although they had only been in contact for a few days, Nian Bing's culinary attainments made him extremely satisfied. It wasn't easy to find such a special chef who came knocking on his door. Therefore, although Garamandes was frustrated, he didn't have the slightest intention of giving up on Nian Bing at this time. He could only control the two types of energy in Nian Bing's body. He found that Nian Bing's spiritual force seemed to have given up on controlling his own magic and was completely concentrated in his brain. He didn't know what he was thinking about. Perhaps he was also thinking of a way to get out of this predicament. What was Nian Bing doing? Of course, he had no reason to commit suicide. He naturally had his own reasons for stopping the rotation of the same origin of ice and fire and forcing himself into a desperate situation. After many years of magic training, the same origin of ice and fire had always been with him as he grew. However, he also deeply understood that this wasn't the true origin of ice and fire. The two magical elements of ice and fire were only maintaining a mysterious balance under a mysterious situation. In the process of using it, although he understood a little of the characteristics of the same origin of ice and fire, he still couldn't eliminate the hidden danger between ice and fire. Nian Bing thought about how to solve this problem the most during his daily training. Through the guidance of Long Ji and Evernight, as well as his own experience from flipping through various magical materials, he already had some theoretical methods that could succeed. In addition, these few days, Garamandes enlightened him on magic. Nian Bing was even more certain of his understanding of magic. This kind of training was undoubtedly very dangerous, and now that he had the Dragon King by his side to protect him, it was naturally the best time. Nian Bing was betting that Garamandes wouldn't bear to see him die. He was very confident about this point. Therefore, after starting his training, he relied on his tyrannical mental strength to directly share the ice and fire. Did Nian Bing really chase away all the magical power? Of course not. Although he gave up control of most of the magical power, he still left a fire element and an ice element in the spiritual brand between his eyebrows. Back then, when he was researching how to solve the problem of ice and fire being of the same origin, the biggest obstacle in his thinking was how to implement it. However, Garamandes' words of starting from a young age and feeling from one element made Nian Bing's thoughts suddenly clear. He had now completely focused his mental strength in his mind, wholeheartedly feeling the similarities and differences between the two magical elements of ice and fire. From the start of his training until now, more than 6 hours had passed. They left the cave at noon, and Nian Bing's understanding of the two magical elements of ice and fire was getting stronger and stronger. This kind of situation was very rare. Usually, in the process of training, tens of thousands of magical elements were absorbed and released, and the magical elements were always in the process of operation. Even if he wanted to, it was impossible for him to only observe one magical element. Now that he had given up his original magical power, he was able to enter this kind of situation. This was a mysterious feeling. With a deep understanding, Nian Bing began to transform the ice and fire element. He discovered that the ice and fire elements were both pure element. It was just that they had different characteristics. Comparatively speaking, the ice element was a stable magical element, while the fire element was much more active. It was always restless and restless. The stable ice element was more convenient for control, and was also suitable for attack and defense. Moreover, it could be transformed into water, and at the same time, it had the life aura of water. The life aura was a common characteristic of water and ice, just like the holy aura of light. The active fire element, because of its violent characteristics, was more suitable for attack, and was the most unstable among the various magical elements. Its energy waves were also the strongest. The cold air of ice and the heat of fire, because of their opposite characteristics, would repel or cancel each other out when they met. If there was a common characteristic between them, it would be the origin. Not only ice and fire, but the foundation of all magical elements was the word element. Whether it was ice or fire, in Nian Bing's mind, they were all a dot, an extremely small dot of light that could only be felt with mental strength. Although their attributes were different, the amount of energy they could translate was exactly the same, and the same was true for other magical elements. Thinking of this, Nian Bing suddenly had a deeper understanding of magic to a certain extent. The basic amount of energy of any magical element was the same, but due to the different characteristics of each of the 7 basic magical elements, when magic was used, the characteristics of each magical element would be more clearly reflected according to the amount of magical elements. In addition, the 7 types of magic were mutually reinforcing and restraining each other, which was why there were so many different types of magic. And the power of magic was related to the purity and quantity of magical elements. The so-called purity was that the more magical elements condensed in a certain volume, the higher the purity of the magic. And the quantity of magic was the embodiment of the amount of magic. Simply speaking, the smaller the volume of a fireball of magical elements, the more powerful it would be. The so-called compression of the volume of magic was to increase the strength of the magic, and mental strength was the most important factor that affected the purity of magic. The higher the level of magic, because of the size of the magic, the greater the difference between each element. And now, in Nian Bing's mental imprint between her eyebrows, there was only one magical element each, ice and fire. At this moment, the difference between them was the smallest. If she let the ice element become more active, the fire element would become more stable. When the 2 elements reached an ingenious balance, they might not repel each other so much. And this balance was what she wanted to pursue now. Thinking of this, Nian Bing's spirit was greatly lifted. Because, she thought, the reason why her ice and fire coexisted peacefully during the rotation was because in the process of rotation, the fire element's activity and violence were suppressed, and the ice element became more active because of the rotation. So, they could not invade each other and peacefully stay together. If the rotation could achieve such a balance, then could the control of mental strength also achieve such a situation? If it could, then, she would not have anything to worry about in the future. Thinking of this point, Nian Bing's ice and fire coexisting magic had unknowingly entered the second stage, although there was still a certain distance to the point where the 2 opposite types of magic could be converted to each other. But, after thinking of this point, the danger of the ice and fire coexisting magic had also disappeared. Next, what she wanted to do was to experiment, using these 2 single magical elements to test out the point of balance. With the control of mental strength, suppressing the activity of the magical elements and making the stable magical elements active was not a difficult matter. At this moment, Nian Bing could not help but be grateful to her first master, Jia Ji. If not for Jia Ji's supervision, which allowed her to greatly increase her mental strength in the process of practicing her culinary arts, causing her mental strength to far surpass that of a mage of the same level, how could she perfectly control the ice and fire coexisting magic? Late at night, the heaven-shaking mountain range appeared to be much quieter. The birds and beasts that were active during the day had already returned to their nests. The reason why the center of the heaven-shaking mountain range was like spring all year round was naturally due to the influence of Garamandes, the fire dragon king. The large mountain that he had lived in for thousands of years had long been infected by his fire element, becoming a true mountain of fire element. After 2 hours, Nian Bing had not walked far. In this place where she was resting, the surrounding temperature was suitable, and along with the night breeze, it brought along the morning dew. Although the current Garamandes was in human form, the faintly discernible dragon aura on his body made no creatures dare to approach him. He was currently very depressed. After more than half a day, Nian Bing's state still did not change at all. He did not want to give up on Nian Bing, so after thinking for a long time, he still decided to try to rotate it. However, this required the cooperation of Nian Bing's mental strength. Otherwise, even if the two magical elements of ice and fire were to rotate, without Nian Bing's support, everything would still be in vain. However, Nian Bing now seemed to be sleeping, her mental strength completely concentrated in her brain, without the slightest intention of spilling out. This made Garamandes more and more irritated. He could not wait to beat up Nian Bing to vent his anger. Just when Garamandes wanted to take the risk of triggering Nian Bing's mental strength, his mental strength finally reacted, and the reaction was very stable. The mental strength split into two and flowed out of his mind, respectively entering the two magical elements of ice and fire that were in a static state, as if trying to draw out some of these two magical elements. Garamandes felt Nian Bing's greed, and subconsciously cooperated with her to release some of the magical elements of ice and fire. A strange scene happened. The two magical elements did not start to rotate to drive the other magical elements as Garamandes had imagined, but instead gathered towards his chest under the control of Nian Bing. A gentle white light emerged from Nian Bing's chest. That was the aura of the Heavenly Flower Token. The Heavenly Flower Token had chosen to complete the second stage of the fusion of ice and fire at his chest precisely because of the Heavenly Flower Token to stabilize the magic's agitation. The two waves of mental strength did different things under Nian Bing's ingenious control. The fire became much quieter, while the ice became more active. When they reached a perfect balance, the two magical elements contained each other and completely merged together. The stable state shocked Garamandes. A rotation gradually appeared, but the rotation speed was extremely slow. The two magical elements of ice and fire slowly exchanged positions, circulating naturally, as if they were a pair of close brothers, close to each other without any trace of rejection. Time passed minute by minute. Nian Bing used her mental strength to mobilize the two magical elements that originally belonged to her, bit by bit, to carry out the fusion process. As the amount of fusion increased, the effects of the fusion became more and more perfect. Garamandes finally understood that the seemingly weak human in front of him was growing stronger. He never thought that in such a short period of time, Nian Bing could actually make such a big breakthrough. He couldn't help but secretly tell himself that, coordinating with his cultivation, he constantly controlled the magical elements to output. Of course, he couldn't possibly know that today's fusion was the result of Nian Bing's many years of hard work and research. Only someone like him who was born with an ice and fire constitution, coupled with his familiarity with the two magical elements of ice and fire, could complete the second stage of fusion. When Nian Bing woke up from the state, it was already the morning of the next day. The clothes on his body were mixed with sweat. It emitted an unpleasant smell. However, the moment he opened his eyes, the whole world seemed to have changed. Everything was so clear. He could even see the texture on the leaves in the distance and see the changes in the feathers of the bird. Everything was so beautiful. As long as he deliberately paid attention, the amount of various magical elements in the air would be clearly presented in front of him. In his chest, a gentle ball of energy was slowly rotating. It was a completely liquid state. The red and blue appeared so calm. There was no conflict between them, and there was no rejection of each other. It was so comfortable that it couldn't be the sky. Feeling the capacity of his magical power, Nian Bing was surprised to find that after one night, his magical power had actually made great progress. He was only a step away from entering the realm of a sorcerer. The characteristics of ice and fire were deeply imprinted in his mind, so clear. Stinking brat, tell me, how are you going to compensate me for my mental loss? Garamandes' strange voice sounded. Nian Bing turned around to look, only to see him leaning on a rock at the side and looking at him. Smiling awkwardly, Nian Bing said, "Great Garamandes, I didn't expect that I would rest for so long. You won't blame me for such a small matter, right?" Garamandes chuckled and said, "Just a little thing? I don't think so. After living for tens of thousands of years, it's the first time I've seen a human who dares to use me. Don't tell me that your actions yesterday were not intentional. Do you think I'll believe it?" After all, he was a dragon that had lived for tens of thousands of years. When Nian Bing's ice and fire had completely entered the second stage, he immediately understood that he had been fooled. Nian Bing smiled slightly, the awkwardness on his face disappeared. He said matter-of-factly, "You can't blame me for this. Think about it, when I'm with you on the continent in the future, if my magic level is too poor, won't it be embarrassing for you? Moreover, you said that as long as my head doesn't explode, I won't die no matter what. I also want to master the skill of mimicry as soon as possible. This way I can make more delicious food for you." His words could be considered to have spoken to Garamandes' heart. Garamandes was arrogant by nature. With Nian Bing's invisible support, coupled with the temptation of delicious food, it immediately reduced the anger in his heart by a lot. He casually picked up the branch from yesterday, pointed to the holy brilliance sword on the ground, and said, "Carry it and continue on with the journey. Yesterday you still had the energy to use me. Obviously, you're not tired enough. Today you have to walk for 4 hours before you can rest for a while. Every time you rest, you can't rest for more than 2 hours. If you dare to use me again, I'll directly detonate the magic in your body." After saying that, he walked directly into the distance. Nian Bing secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He knew that Garamandes had already accepted the fact that he had to suffer in silence. 4 hours was fine. He was in a very good mood now. The ice and fire homology had a qualitative leap. Even if there was no fundamental increase in his magic power, his ice and fire homology magic was not as strong as before. He grabbed the holy brilliance sword with both hands and carried it on his shoulders. He strode out of the mountain range with Garamandes. As he walked, Nian Bing discovered 2 problems. The most direct one was that he realized that the holy brilliance sword did not seem to be as heavy as it was yesterday. Although it was still very uncomfortable, the overall weight seemed to be a lot lighter. Another one was that he realized that he was actually not hungry. One had to know that because of yesterday's cultivation, he had not eaten for an entire day. Magical elements could not be eaten as food. Nian Bing was a smart person. When he thought of these 2 points, he quickly searched his brain. Soon, he thought of the poison that Garamandes gave him yesterday. Although he had long guessed that it was not a real poison, he did not expect it to have such an effect. Could it be that he was drugged? Nian Bing secretly rejoiced. His gaze towards Garamandes' back became much gentler. Nian Bing's relaxed mood did not last long. Although his body was not worse than an ordinary person's, this rugged mountain road was not something that an ordinary person could walk on, not to mention that he was carrying a heavy weapon on his shoulders. Perhaps Garamandes was still holding a grudge against him for using him yesterday. This time, he did not help Nian Bing when he fell several times. It was only once when Nian Bing almost fell into the mountain stream that he used the soft branches to pull Nian Bing back. His magic had improved. Nian Bing also thought of using magic to hold this heavy sword. However, He only tried once and gave up on this idea because there were 10 red marks on his body from the branches. Fortunately, Garamandes did not object to him switching from ice magic to water magic. Otherwise, Nian Bing would have been covered in scars by now. Thinking back to the relaxing scene of sitting on the pole, Nian Bing's heart shrank. The good days were gone. Now, he could only worship his own legs. 4 hours later, Nian Bing was so tired that he fell to the ground like a dead dog. Before the branches hit his body, he quickly sat up. Before he entered the state of meditation, he also stuffed a smelly thing into his mouth. Since he had guessed that this was a good thing, he did not resist anymore. He obediently swallowed it and immediately entered the state of meditation. In the state of meditation, the recovery of the body's functions would be much faster. Days passed like this. In the first few days, Nian Bing was basically in a daze other than in the state of meditation. The fatigue of his body often made it difficult for him to breathe. It felt as if he was hovering between life and death every time. However, after 5 days, Nian Bing gradually adapted to this kind of life. As time passed, he was more and more certain that the thing that Garamandes gave him was some kind of tonic. Because, every time he carried the Holy Glory Sword for a few hours, his muscles and bones would be extremely sore. However, as long as he ate that smelly thing and woke up from the state of meditation, his body would at least recover half of its condition. His muscles and bones would not hurt as much, and he would not feel hungry.